All right, Rockfin is going, and here we go.
I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Friday. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have a special guest with me tonight. His name is Elgier, and he is from Socialist Alternative. So welcome, Elgier.
Thank you. How you doing? Good to be back.
Doing great considering these crazy times like we're living in. So I do want to go ahead and tell everyone what we're going to be talking about tonight. And then I'll go ahead and let Elgier tell you a little bit about Socialist Alternative and where he thinks we are headed politically in this country, given what has just happened recently legislatively. So tonight we're going to discuss Cenk Uygur explodes on Joe Rogan. What is all of that about? I can't wait to get into that story. Also going to discuss the squad's cringe vote. Yikes. And why is Rand Paul in the middle there? And of course, Socialist Alternative is here. I want to remind everyone the call-in portion of this show will start around 9:30, 9:45. But I want to go ahead and get started with Socialist Alternative. So, Elgier, one of the things that people have been saying to me is that they've been involved in other organizations, but it seems like a lot of times it's just centered around getting someone elected and they just want to do more. And I know that with Socialist Alternative, you guys do a lot more than just focusing on candidates. And can you tell everybody a little bit about what you do over there?
Sure. Certainly the work of Shama Sawant, the first socialist city councilor, independent, who won in 2013, have done tremendous work on a number of fronts. But the organization does a whole lot more. We've been around for over 35 years. And some of the most recent work that we've been engaged in certainly is the organizing around Starbucks, Amazon here in New York, where I reside, and supporting the workers at LDJ5, which is literally right next door to JFK8, where they had the historic victory in April to get AOU, Amazon Labor Union, to represent the workers at JFK8, but also of the more recent period. And we know what is happening around the question, the attacks on abortion rights and reproductive rights, and that is Roe versus Wade and the kind of the early signs of where the majority of the Supreme Court wants to go, and that is totally dismantle Roe versus Wade. And so we've been doing some organizing with students, student walkouts, organizing with other workers around this particular issue. Around the country, we will be participating in demonstrations with some of certainly the leading liberal women's organizations, but certainly a lot of the socialist left, a lot of young people, a lot of young women who've been radicalized just literally over the past few days by that leaked document. So SA is right in the middle of it. We are an organizing force. We are not as big as DSA, but one of the things about our organization is that running in elections is just one element of the work that is meant to kind of heighten the profile of the organization, heighten the profile of the social struggles at play, the program and the approach, a working class struggle approach. And so for us, it's really about organizing in the grassroots among workers, youth, the trade union movement, and like.
Awesome. And I want to show everyone here, I'm just going to share something really quick. This was on Socialist Alternative's website, and I think that this is well said. It says here, Democrats have had 50 years to write Roe into law. No more excuses. We will not vote for them in the midterms if they fail to go all out to codify Roe. I love this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's we working people, and unfortunately, a lot of the genuine Democratic Party voters are in the midst of a really abusive relationship with the Democratic Party establishment and the corporate Democrats who control the party. It's been 50 years since the women's movement and the working class movement as a whole was able to win that tremendous victory in the midst of the Nixon years. In fact, when Roe versus Wade really brought into existence the right for women to decide their own body autonomy and to decide if they want to keep a child or not, or baby or not. And so this particular petition that we've put forward is a way of saying we need to amplify the need for independent working class politics, amplify the fact that the Democratic Party is not a party of the working class. They're certainly not a party that defends the rights of working class and poor women and women of color in this society, and that we need to change course immediately. And certainly Wednesday's vote really put the punctuation point on the fact that they are not willing to defend Roe versus Wade and all the gains that the working class, the labor movement has produced through social struggle and movements.
Well said. And I want to get your opinion about something. You brought up Wednesday's vote. So I'm sure you heard about this, about Nina Turner. You know, she lost her race and she came forward on Status Coup and said that the squad actually was threatened. And that's why they did not offer support for her campaign. But in reference to Wednesday's vote, something I've noticed, Joe Manchin seems to be able to vote however he wants, right, go against the Democratic Party. Yeah. And I don't see anybody threatening Joe Manchin. I don't see him losing any committee seats or anything like that. And I want to get your opinion about that. Why do you think it's okay for him to do it, or he's more willing to go against what the party wants? But when you think about the squad, they're not willing to push back.
Well, first, I think the first thing, the squad has accepted the position or the power of Pelosi, of Schumer, and certainly of Biden on a number of fronts. They had many opportunities to fight on serious questions. For example, 15, as a national minimum wage. We think about Build Back Better, right, and how to fight on those particular questions. They've been unable to do that. I think they have been, and certainly AOC is probably the greatest example of this. They have accepted really the Democratic Party leadership. And by accepting the Democratic Party leadership, they accept the Democratic Party approach, not just in elections, but how to deal with some of the key questions facing working people and the poor. They may rhetorically speak in a very working class way, but their actions, their votes, and the policies that's coming from the White House show that there's no energy, no vibrancy to fight effectively against the right wing and certainly the Republican Party. I think Nina is right on one side. There is an element of bullying there from the Democratic Party establishment, but people can only bully you if you accept the bully in some respects. And I think the squad has accepted the bullying because I think that's an easy way out. Instead of saying, no, we're going to stand our ground. We believe what Nina represents, her policies, her politics, her voice represents genuine working people who want healthcare and education, who want to end police violence in the society, that really want to believe in some level of true democracy in the nation. But it seems that the bullying and the fact that, like I said, they accepted the Pelosi, Schumer, Biden leadership, to me speaks volumes in effect.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Someone sent me this about a week ago, actually, and I was waiting for the right time to share it. And they sent me this message, and I think they had a point in reference to the squad. And they said they picked people who aren't trying to build a base of support or distinguish themselves from the party leadership. It doesn't matter if you think Medicare for all is a good idea. It matters that you are willing to tank Biden's agenda to get it and to build a block of reps who will help you do it.
That's right. I mean, I think that's spot on. Because ultimately, I mean, we always have to remember, and your show has covered this 1,000 times, that the corporate Dems are backed by corporate America, and to have certain policies that would infringe on their right to maximize their profits, that will cut across their prestige, that will cut across their power in society, is nonsensical. And so you have to almost be very much the way Shama Sawant is, that she's in the house of jackals, totally surrounded by Democrats. But the reason why she's been effective on all these issues is because she says, I'm not just a legislator, I'm an organizer. I'm a person that's going to get into the streets. And so when I do get into City Hall, I'm going to have 1,000 people outside. I'm going to have another 1,000 sitting in the chamber of City Hall in Seattle. And so that's where the real power lies. And unfortunately and tragically, the AOCs and the rest of the squad, who in the first iteration of it was able to, at least, let's keep in mind, AOC, along with other young people, occupied Nancy Pelosi's office. Yep. Literally the same day that she was inaugurated and took this sworn into office. She did that. She hasn't done that since. And you compare that to when she wore the tax the rich dress at the Met Gala, while there were BLM activists outside protesting. So if you're about it, then you are about organizing ordinary people. You're fighting on the key issues that matter to them. And they have accepted that leadership, and they have accepted the fact that the Biden administration, domestically and certainly internationally, has been a total failure, in fact.
Yep. Do you think that the squad would have been better off in local positions? And the reason why I asked that question is because when you look at someone like Shama Sawant, you know, she's a city councilor, and some people look at city councilor as though it's not as an important position. I disagree with that, because city council, they control the budget.
I agree with you, yes.
I think it is an important position. But Shama was able to maintain her activism and continue politics at the same time. Whereas when you go into DC, that's a totally different animal, a totally different beast, I feel. Do you think they may have been better off if they would have ran for like local positions instead of Congress?
Well, I think the key question is their politics. The thing about Shama Sawant is that she's part of a revolutionary organization, a revolutionary Marxist organization, that she's part of leadership. So she's part of our branches. She is not onto herself by herself. Everything that Shama does, and Shama is brilliant, I know her personally, but everything is done through our leadership bodies. Everything's done through our rank and file members that can tailor and develop the program and the approach that Shama has. So even if it's a congressional seat or a more city council seat, and I agree with you, the city council seats are absolutely vital. That's where the bread and butter issues come to the fore for many working people. It's not just a question of potholes being fixed, but it's the question of rent control, the question of labor laws, right? And so, I think in the sense of Shama, it is the fact that she is part of a revolutionary collective that can spearhead the work alongside her. And I think that's very, very crucial, very important, but also your political perspective as well. If you see yourself as a servant to working people, and we've made this point many a times, Shama makes the average wage of a worker in District 3. She brings home $40,000 a year. In fact, a city councilor in Seattle makes $120,000 a year. All the rest of that money is given back to social movements, different organizations. She donated to AOU when she spoke in Staten Island just about 2 weeks ago. She gave $20,000 to AOU for their organizing efforts to continue the campaign to unionize Amazon in Staten Island and across the country. So it's really about your political perspective. It's really about your political orientation. And if you are a obedient servant to working people, and you are also of the class itself, then yeah, it doesn't matter what seat you have. That's going to take precedent, and you will be a fighter for working people. Unfortunately, the squad, who are members of DSA, and DSA and SA are two distinct types of organization. That organization has not put the kind of influence, their imprint on their seats and what they should be doing concretely. It's very much different than what we have with Shama.
What would you say is the difference between DSA and, because I get this question a lot, what would you say is the difference between DSA and Socialist Alternative?
Well, first, I mean, DSA is a big tent organization. You can have every potpourri of socialists inside of DSA. You can even have people who are, to use the term, pretty bourgeois, and be a small business owner. Nothing wrong with small business owner. Let me be clear about that. But they will have a different perspective than maybe a janitor or a teacher. And so that big tent allows you to have different political orientations and approaches. With SA, we are an organization where we have open democratic discussion and debate. But when we decide to move on something, we move like an army. We move. And so, for example, the victories that Shama won, our organization put the full weight behind Shama Sawant to win. And certainly the last campaign that we engaged in, the right-wing recall against Shama, we were able to defeat it because we summoned the full force of our organization behind the campaign, but also ordinary working people in the district to say, no, Shama must stay in office because of what she represents for working people, the poor and the oppressed. Also, SA is an international organization. It's part of it, is in solidarity with different international socialist organizations around the world. And that's a big difference. DSA really doesn't have that kind of structure or affiliation. And so that's also very important. Makes Social Alternative very unique in that sense. Also, I think one of the big things is that for DSA, they have a strategy at this juncture of running elections. They think that, in fact, if you run elections, that you can kind of build a kind of a synergy of democratic socialists in office, and that could propel you to kind of challenge the corporate Dems, challenge the two-party system. Like I said earlier, we see elections not as some panacea, but it's the outgrowth of grassroots organizing. It's just one weapon in our arsenal to fight back against corporate America, the two-party system, and capitalism as a whole. And so we have a difference of opinion of how elections should be used by the working class, certainly. And also, we believe that we need our own political party. We need our own workers' party in this nation. And as a transitional approach to run independent working class candidates like Anina Turner, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Like, do you think that Socialist Alternative will eventually start to run candidates? Because I was thinking about that, and I know I said this last time we were on here, but I still feel this way. I honestly think that Shama Sawant should primary challenge Pramila Jayapal. I don't feel that Pramila Jayapal is progressive. I think she's been playing a lot of us, and obviously we saw the real her like really come out when the Progressive Caucus decided to support and back Shontel Brown over Nina Turner. But I would love to see that challenge. I want to get your opinion about that.
There's a lot of people who would love to see that challenge. I mean, right now, Shama is just this very focused on, finishing, her term. We've been part of a lot of campaigns. We've been part of a lot of struggles of the more recent period. So we haven't gotten to the point to discuss what's the next phase of our electoral work. But certainly if an opportunity comes, not just in Seattle, but in any other city, where we've been able to organize effectively among working people, there's a level of support within the labor movement, among young people, among the working class as a general point. we certainly will look at running an election. But like I said, we're not an organization that is quote unquote an electioneering type of organization. We're really a grassroots organizing, revolutionary Marxist organization, and elections is just one part of the arsenal in our weaponry politically.
So did you guys hear that? That's the difference. Like, election isn't their primary focus. And I think that that's very important. We got to remember that a lot of the power resides in the people, and the people coming together in large numbers. So that brings me to our first story here, because I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this by now. It's been all over independent media. So this is about the squad and the House. So the House approves nearly $40 billion in aid to Ukraine as it fights off Russian aggression. So I guess I was not surprised to hear this information, but it's just another example of how the squad has once again decided to vote along with corporate Dems. So I'll go ahead and I'll read a little bit of this for you. So it says the House on Tuesday approved nearly $40 billion in additional aid for Ukraine as the country battles Russia's brutal invasion, now in its third month. The package of the military, economic, and humanitarian support, which is $7 billion more than the $33 billion President Biden requested, was approved on a bipartisan vote of 368 to 57. With the Senate expected to follow suit this week. Now I'll get into what happened in the Senate in just a second. All House Democrats present Tuesday night voted in favor of the measure. They were joined by 149 House Republicans. 57 House Republicans voted no. Congress provided $13.6 billion in aid to Ukraine this year, meaning that if the latest package is passed, lawmakers will approve a total of more than $50 billion in aid. In remarks on the House floor Tuesday night, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi repeatedly denounced Russian President Vladimir Putin as a coward, described the aid package as an act of mercy, and cast the war in Ukraine as one of which the future of global democracy hinges. So, and then this portion down here. According to the summary provided by the House Appropriations Committee, the package includes nearly $15 billion in military equipment, training, intelligence support, and salaries for Ukraine's national security forces, nearly $14 billion in programs administered by the State Department, such as humanitarian support for Ukrainian refugees and the planned return of the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv, and $5 billion devoted to addressing the issue of global food insecurity. Now, I'm going to tell everyone what happened in the Senate in just a second, but first and foremost, Algier, I want to get your opinion on this, because as it says in the article, every Democrat House member voted in favor of this aid package, which means that includes the squad. I want to get your take on this, because I remember when they were running, some of them saying that they're against these wars, and especially abroad, especially someone like Ilhan Omar, who is from Somalia, and her country is repeatedly being bombed by the United States government. You would think that out of all the people, she would at least be the one to push back, but they have again gone along with corporate Democrats. So I want to get your opinion about this.
Mm-hmm. Look, war is the bloodletting of politics in a real way, and war also at the same time really distinguish you depending on your position, where you stand with the international working class and poor. And unfortunately, they made the decision. Once again, it seems like this is the theme of tonight's conversation, is that they are following suit with Pelosi and Schumer and Joe Biden. This war has become a proxy war, really, for U.S. imperialism, for NATO forces. And certainly, SA rejects Putin's war in the Ukraine. At the same time, we gave no support to Zelensky, who was a right-wing populist. Let's be clear about that. And certainly the deeper incursion of U.S. imperialism, NATO, into the region, we certainly reject as well. And that we need a political alternative to this crisis, right? At the same time, for the squad to support this, it's along the same lines of a liberal argument around the question of war, right? Let's go through the channels of the United Nations. Let's go through the channels of the international community itself. And frankly, that is not going to solve this question wholeheartedly. While at the same time, this proxy war will have a profound effect on global food. It is also a proxy on the question of the new Cold War with China. And China is in a bit of a predicament because of their collaboration with Putin and Russia. We have seen what Putin has done in the sense of attacking the anti-war movement in Russia. And so, unfortunately, and this, like I said, war is a very crucial question for socialists, right? It was the Russian Revolution that ultimately ended World War I, in fact. It was a small minority of socialists in the onset of World War I that came out and spoke out against, at that moment, the bloodiest war in what would become the bloodiest war in human history in 1914. And so this is a serious question for the working class and for the socialist movement. Unfortunately, in the United States, it's depending on where you get your news, you can't really get a handle on the situation. But certainly, unfortunately, the squad is not providing what we would call kind of a working class or democratic socialist or socialist approach to understanding what this war represents. And the allocation of $40 billion is only continuing the proxy war because Biden cannot send U.S. troops.
Right.
I'm sure that he would love to, but I think the appetite for the United States working class could not stomach a war. Mind you, we have just come out of Afghanistan and Iraq, and we know what happened in both of those cases. Both of those societies bombed until the Stone Ages, and certainly democracy has not been brought either to Iraq or Afghanistan. So this is a very serious question, and it's unfortunate, but it's kind of following the same line that we're seeing what the squad has been doing on a number of fronts, domestically and certainly now internationally.
Agreed. And it's interesting to me too, because you do hear squad members advocating for canceling student loan debt. They're now starting to get back on the Medicare for All train, though they ignored it last year, or some of them were saying access. They mentioned that word. But at the same time, here we have $40 billion, and I don't hear them advocating for, no, we need to give that money to the American people, because I just reported on this a couple of days ago. There's now a baby formula shortage in the United States.
Yes.
So it looks really crazy that we are giving money to someone else, but we don't even have all of our material needs like met in this country. Like we're having like food shortage. The gas prices are incredibly high, and everything is expensive now. But then on top of that, if you have an infant, now we have the baby formula shortage as well. And it doesn't make any sense. It's like you're living in your house and you receive extra money, and instead of taking care of your family, you choose to give that money to someone else and let your family starve.
That's right. Look, the 40 billion, and then of course the other billions that they gave in the midst of the war, was really trying to situate themselves, because U.S. imperialism really is on the back foot, right? Iraq, Afghanistan, the Cold War with China. China is a superpower economically, militarily. They're developing. We know what they're doing in Africa. Kind of a new Berlin Conference that took place in the 1800s, basically just dividing the continent for the fiefdoms of European and ultimately U.S. colonialism. China now is playing a profound role in the number of countries in Africa and in Latin America. So U.S. imperialism is trying to get its feet on the ground again, to play the dominant role. Now, certainly they are still a military superpower, the greatest that we've ever seen in human history. But at the same time, they have lost their luster. And so this money that's being allocated, and this is where the squad, the socialist movement, the workers movement, if we're going to build a powerful movement, we're going to have to touch on, we're going to deal with these issues in a fundamental way. That we want the war to end, but also we want those resources to be provided for working people, the poor, not only in the United States, but around the world. And that, to me, is a very crucial question, because we have the refugee crisis coming out of the Ukraine, and not just Ukrainians, but those of African descent as well. Yep. Right. So we have to have a holistic approach, a holistic political, economic approach, and highlight the need for a socialist transformation of society that will ultimately put an end to war, to violence, to the greed, and to the poverty that we see not just in the United States, but around the world. And so.
Agreed. Well, there was one person who pushed back on this in the Senate, and that was Rand Paul. And I do want to show his speech here for just a second, because it does seem like you have people on the right speaking out against this. And don't get me wrong, I do realize that if it was Donald Trump doing this, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rand Paul would probably go right along with what Donald Trump wants. But they seem to be the ones like speaking out against it. And so I do want to share this from Rand Paul. So let me go ahead and start this here. I'm going to skip over Chuck Schumer because what he says isn't really that. Who knew that Rand Paul would jump in and be the hero here? But here we go.
Mr. President.
Senator from Kentucky.
Reserving the right to object, my oath of office is to the U.S. Constitution, not to any foreign nation. And no matter how sympathetic the cause, my oath of office is to the national security of the United States of America. We cannot save Ukraine by dooming the U.S. economy. In March, inflation hit a 40-year high. Gasoline alone is up 48%, and energy prices are up 32% over the last year. Food prices have increased by nearly 9%. Used vehicle prices are up 35% for the year, and new vehicle prices have increased 12% or more. Yes, inflation doesn't just come out of nowhere, it comes from deficit spending. The United States spent nearly $5 trillion on COVID-19 bailouts, leading to one of the highest and most sustained levels of inflation in U.S. history. Americans are feeling the pain, and Congress seems intent only on adding to that pain by shoveling more money out the door as fast as they can. This bill under consideration would spend $40 billion. This is the second spending bill for Ukraine in 2 months, and this bill is 3 times larger than the first. Our military aid to Ukraine is nothing new, though. Since 2014, the United States has provided more than $6 billion in security assistance to Ukraine, in addition to the $14 billion Congress authorized just a month ago. If this bill passes, the U.S. will have authorized roughly $60 billion in total spending for Ukraine. For those who say this is not enough, for those of you in this chamber who say that our military spending is never enough, let's put $60 billion into perspective. According to Elias Youssef, a security assistant at the Stimson Center, Kiev would become the largest yearly recipient of U.S. military aid of the past 2 decades. Except for the top 5 countries, $60 billion is more than every other country in the world spends on their entire military expenditures. If this gift to Ukraine passes, our total aid to Ukraine will almost equal the entire military budget of Russia. And it's not as if we have that money lying around. We will have to borrow that money from China to send it to Ukraine. The cost of this package we are voting on today is more than the U.S. spent during the first year of the U.S. conflict in Afghanistan. Congress authorized force, and the president sent troops into the conflict. The same cannot be said of Ukraine. This proposal towers over domestic priorities as well. The massive package of $60 billion to Ukraine dwarfs the $6 million spent on cancer research annually. $60 billion is more than the amount the government collects in gas taxes each year to build roads and bridges. The $60 billion to Ukraine could fund substantial portions or entire large cabinet departments. The $60 billion nearly equals the entire State Department budget. The $60 billion exceeds the budget for the Department of Homeland Security and for the Department of Energy. And Congress just wants to keep on spending and spending.
So I do want to go ahead and interrupt here and get your take on this so far, Algier. I do like the fact that he broke down how much we spend on different, areas here in the United States versus how much we're trying to give away to another country.
True. I think what he says is correct, but it's a bit of an insidious approach that they're taking. From the standpoint that during the Trump years, damn deficits, they spent as much as they possibly could. In fact, when we think about what they spent in the sense of kind of a bit of bailouts to Main Street, Trump kind of did put money in the pockets of ordinary working people. This is the same person, I would say, Rand Paul, who is a medical doctor who spoke out against Medicare for all, in fact. So I think on the surface, he is absolutely correct. But it is a bit of a classic approach that the Republicans do when the Democrat is in office. You have midterm elections forthcoming, and certainly you're getting ready for 2024, because once the calendar changed to 2023, the presidential elections begin straight away. And so they're just laying the groundwork. I mean, this is also classic right-wing populism as well. So I think a lot of points that he raised is correct. The question of inflation, gas prices, food, absolutely spot on. But ultimately, what is the agenda of the Republican Party and the right wing in solving these issues concretely? And ultimately, what we do need is a taxation on the wealthy, on corporate America, as one step needed to be able to provide the most basic necessities to ordinary working people. Now, will he say something like that? I very much doubt that, particularly the type of corporate donors he has in his front and back pocket. So, so I definitely think is very interesting that he's the one that comes out and says a lot of the very important things that the squad should have been saying, actually,
right?
Completely. But they refuse to do that because they have bought and sold the leadership. They've accepted the leadership and the very essence of the politics of Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden and the Democratic Party establishment.
Correct. Like, this is the position that the squad should have been taking. Absolutely. This is what we voted for. Like, when we voted, and those of us who canvassed and donated money to them, this is what we wanted them to do, to stand up as a unit, not individuals, and push back on the Democrat establishment. But now it's like you have Rand Paul doing it. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking out against it. And the squad just is going along with corporate Democrats. So this is actually what we wanted them to do. Now, granted, Rand Paul has been in office a lot longer than they have. That's another question I do have for you, Algier. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I wonder, was it, foolish of us to think that they would actually go into DC and push back, given the fact that most of them did not have political experience? Like, I know Ayanna Pressley, I was in her district at the time that she ran, and she had served on city council. But other than that, most of them did not have any political experience.
Right. I think we had heightened expectations. When they were elected, I mean, that Congress had the highest amount of women of color, of people of color occupying those seats. Their rhetoric, their standing on certain key issues facing working people really did distinguish themselves from the corporate Dems. I mean, I think in a previous episode, you talked about Joe Crowley just being stunned by AOC gaining in the polls. And this is a individual who at that time was one of the highest ranking Democratic Party officials and electeds in the nation, kind of the boss of the Queen's Democratic Party machine. And this upstart coming out of nowhere, recruited by the Justice Democrats to run against them. And it was totally a fresh air for a lot of working people and the poor. The problem is that when you go into the halls of power, of corporate power, of capitalist power, the institutions that help to govern every single day policies for capitalism, and you're not politically armed with ideas that is not just based on local politics, but based on national and international politics, and you make a conscious decision not to speak on certain issues and to hedge your bets, then you find yourself at this historical moment where Rand Paul is making the kind of arguments that we should be making against the $40 billion and around the key issues facing working people and the poor. And that's how the right wing gets a stranglehold on ordinary working class people and the poor, because they make these points, and the left kind of mutes itself because they're thinking about the party bosses. They're thinking about the next. They're thinking about their next election, right? Yep. And when you do that, you are allowing the right wing to really stand up and to be the voice of ordinary work. And this is an international phenomenon. This is not just here in the United States. We see this going on in France with Le Pen, Bolsonaro in Brazil. When you do not occupy the space to speak in the interest of working people, the right wing will occupy that space. And sometimes it just won't be the right wing. It'll be the hard right, the white nationalists that will usher vigilante white nationalist violence in our communities and throughout the nation, on and on and on. And so this is a crucial question: why the need for a new political party, a new political formation that not only speaks truth to power, but can in fact say, we need those resources in our communities, in our workplaces, in our universities, to make sure that people can live a dignified life. And that's how also you build the kind of political power needed to push back against the hard right, which frankly does not have in its true genuine interest the lives of ordinary working people, the poor and the oppressed.
Agreed. Angela said even Aaron Mate, who has avoided using the term fraud squad, has conceded that they are indeed frauds. Yeah, I saw that. He always called them out, but wanted to be nice. Think everyone's nice has been tested. Well said, Angela. Swift BMF said money for Ukraine, but no formula for American babies. Marjorie Taylor Greene dunking on the squad to their left.
Yes, absolutely. Spot on.
Oh boy. Oh dear. Okay, I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and then I want to show you the numbers that Glenn Greenwald came up with.
Our allies and partners have sent aid to Ukraine. Some of them even broke long-standing traditions by sending military assistance. Germany, Poland, the United Kingdom, and others are stepping up to defend Ukraine like never before. In other words, it's not all about us. It isn't that we always have to be the Uncle Sam, the policeman that saves the world, particularly when it's on borrowed money. Yet the United States accounted for nearly half of what's been spent so far. With a $30 trillion debt, America can't afford to be the world's policeman. The U.S. is trying to recover from the $1.6 trillion we spent on wars in the Middle East, not to mention the $5 trillion borrowed for COVID. We should not forget that the Soviet Union collapsed in large part not because it was defeated militarily, but because it ran out of money. In an attempt to save Ukraine, will we doom the United States to such a future? In the past 2 years, the U.S. has borrowed more money than at any time in our history. We are already experiencing the greatest rate of inflation in over 4 decades. The assault on monetary discipline is untenable, and it cannot go on forever. Unless we put an end to the fiscal insanity, a day of reckoning awaits us. Congress should evaluate the cost of continuing down this path. The biggest threat to the United States today is debt and inflation and the destruction of the dollar. We cannot save Ukraine by killing our economic strength. So I act to modify the bill to allow for a special inspector general. This would be the inspector general that's been overseeing the waste in Afghanistan and has done a great job. So therefore, I ask the senator to modify his request so that the Senate proceeds to the immediate consideration of Calendar 368 HR 7691 Furthermore, that the Paul amendment that has to be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered, read a third time, and the Senate vote on passage of the bill as amended with a 60 affirmative vote threshold for passage.
And that was that. So he did block it in the Senate. And I do want to show everyone the numbers that Glenn Greenwald came up with, because he actually broke this down, which I appreciate him doing this, because I know a lot of money went to Ukraine, but I wasn't able to keep up with how much went out and when it went out, but he did. And so I want to share this timeline that he provided here. So he said February 26, Biden approves 350 million. March 16th, 800 million. So this is like 2 weeks apart. And then March 30th, they receive an additional 500 million. April 12th, 750 million more. And then now May 6th, Biden announces 150 million. So I just want to show everyone that timeline again, just to show you how close this has been, like every 2 weeks, it seems like. But they've received a lot of money and we haven't received anything.
They have not decreased the military budget for the United States, and this war is very crucial for the United States, for U.S. imperialism, in a sense of strategically placing itself at key points that will be absolutely crucial for them to develop the type of raw materials that they want, the kind of access to waterways, in the region itself, greater control and encroachment in the region itself. It's trying to reestablish itself. It makes sense for U.S. imperialism to put this type of money, forward. The problem that they have is that you have the overall crisis of inflation and the prospects of another great recession in the coming months, if not into the next year. But then you have this also social crisis taking place. And the fact that you have a Supreme Court that is about to overturn Roe versus Wade, maybe by the end of next month, once the full decision comes forward, they have put themselves in a serious pickle. The Dems will be annihilated in the midterm elections, concretely. But what they've done in this crisis within the Ukraine, the Supreme Court, there are many young people, working class people, who are just rejecting the Democratic Party. If you listen to some of the language or some of the mood and the consciousness at some of these demonstrations, a lot of people are just totally fed up with the Democratic Party. They can't use the boogeyman of Trump in this case because it's Biden in office, right? They can't run away. Most of the city councils and city offices are controlled by Democrats. And so this is a predicament that U.S. imperialism had. The key question is how does the socialist left, how does the left in totality, and how does the workers' movement begin to get its act together to begin to form organization, a working class struggle approach, and begin to say we need independence from the two parties of big business, and we have to highlight the need for a socialist transformation of society. Will that be done overnight? No, it's not going to be done overnight. But these issues that's in front of us puts the urgency of now for us to discuss, for us to have the protests, for us to do the kind of organizing necessary to really heighten the contradictions in U.S. society, because there are a whole number of them. And I think a new generation is literally being born right in front of our eyes. And particularly if the decision of the Supreme Court comes down, as some of us think it will happen, it will have a devastating effect. And they might be sparking something that they can't put back in the bottle. A genie will be unleashed that it can't put back.
And I really do feel too that the Democratic Party's like hypocrisy is more exposed now, especially, because of social media. But people see, like, I see people calling it out everywhere now. Even people who are like, yes, I'm a diehard, Democrat. People see that you have Democrats in DC advocating for, yes, we must, codify Roe v. Wade. And at the same time, you have Democrats in DC that are supporting anti-choice candidates like Henry Cuellar. We've been reminding people that Hillary Clinton's running mate, Tim Kaine, was also anti-choice, although he's trying to change his position on that now, apparently for voting reasons. But people are starting to see it now. They're like, listen, like it was easier to blame a lot of things on Trump 2 years ago, but now who's in office? Like you have the House, you have the Senate, and you have the White House. You can't continue to keep blaming Donald Trump.
That's right. That's right. Look, Obama also had himself maybe not like a super majority, but he had both houses at the time when he was in office. And when the economic crisis hit, right, we know the first bailout came from Bush to Wall Street. All he did was continue the same policies, right? The UAW contract literally ripped apart, and the auto industry was bailed out. And so we're kind of returning back to this question again of the role of the Democratic Party, right? In the mind of ordinary working people, the party of the working class. That's PR, that's marketing. But when we get down to the heart of the matter, it is what we saw with the George Floyd rebellion. It is what we saw with this pandemic, is what we're seeing on the international national front, that the Democratic Party is a corporate party that at one point did have a coalition of women, of the Black freedom movement, of the labor movement. But concretely, what did we gain from it? The things that we've won in this society has always been through social struggle, has always been through constant organizing, mobilizing, agitating. And that's where we have to return back to. That's the kind of politics that really gets the goods. Right. And that's what AOU showed in the sense of JFK 8 as an example. That's what we showed in Seattle when we defeated Amazon, not just once, but twice over the past number of years. We taxed Amazon and their attempts to steal the election in 2019.
Well said. Well said. There is a question for you on Rockfin, I believe, Algier. Any talk of passing Roe v. Wade should not be supported unless Medicare for All is attached to it. Women's health is no more or less important than everyone else's health. No Medicare for All, then no Roe v. Wade. Also, Sab, my guess is the reason Manchin can get away with voting how he votes is because Pelosi is a more effective bully than Chuck. Believe me, no one is fearing Chuck. Also, Algier, what is your strategy on pushing ballot initiatives? Thank you for that, Roger.
Well, on the question of Manchin is being used the way kind of Lieberman was used during the Obama years, right? Kind of this linchpin, saying, well, he's not going to support it. So, he's not going to support it. That kind of puts us in a predicament. Well, how can we kind of go against Joe? And, and they playing this really insidious game on this question, right? Remember, Biden said that he's been, the record has shown that he's been in Congress for over 40 years and that, he's supposed to be a master chess player and kind of convincing both Republicans and Democrats how to move them like chess pieces. But Manchin is being used. Christian Sinema, same tactics, same approach. On the ballot initiatives, certainly we support, independent candidates running. We certainly support, and we saw in the last congressional elections in a number of states, very key legislation being passed that really supported working people, right? We think of 15 in Florida as an example. And so we, whatever opportunity that we have to support ballot initiatives that really push the needle on the question of supporting ordinary working people for the things that they need, we certainly will do that. And we have done that, either if it's writing articles or some of our members even participating in some of those type of campaigns that really heighten the kind of consciousness and the mood that's needed to win these things. But the ballot initiatives is just one aspect of it. It's got to be part of the organizing. It's got to be part of the constant organizing, because November or whatever special election takes place around a ballot initiative should be really predicated on the kind of organizing you've done from 6 months to a year before that. And I think that's a very crucial question. And sometimes we don't think about that. We think about the big initiatives, the big, opportunities that we have, but it's really what takes place months to years before that to build up to that moment. And so certainly we will support those things when they come up.
Awesome. Okay, LG, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, you were talking to me earlier about ALU in New York, the second Amazon warehouse location, and that union effort did not pass. And since you were involved with that, I do want to ask you, why do you think it didn't pass at the second location?
Right. Well, I think the first thing, Amazon learned this lesson from JFK. They personally attacked Chris Smalls, who's the president of ALU. They went on the offensive with union busting tactics. They used racist and sexist language and imagery that really recoiled a lot of the Amazon workers to support the drive at JFK 8. JFK 8 also had an organizing committee as well, and there were valuable lessons that were being learned by the JFK workers, which is one of the most important elements of Amazon's whole entire infrastructure. It has 8,000 workers on the East Coast, and it plays a very important role in the sense of the technology of getting kind of the packages out as quickly as they do on a day-to-day basis. But what Amazon did, it also allowed the NLRB to come in and say, no, workers should have the right to be in the break rooms and not be stopped from talking to their coworkers about the union. Right. And LDJ 5, they took a different approach. They didn't slander or attack ALU. They brought in consulting firms, anti-union busting consulting firms, and they began to have this approach, a very like a nonchalant approach. They say, hey, if they grab a worker, hey, let's wait, let's see what happens in JFK 8, what kind of contract they get. Do we really need a union here? Also, it's a smaller facility as well. It's not the 8,000 JFK workers. It's probably another 2,000, many of them part-time workers, many of them young people, many of them some older people who have different jobs that they have to run to back and forth. And so the workforce was different. Amazon took a different approach. But one of the key things, and I think for ALU, is how do you transport the lessons of organizing at JFK to another facility that might be a little bit more different? So our strategy always has to be different, have to be ever very nuanced, very changing under certain conditions. But Amazon is very clear that they want this union drive to end. And I think no matter what they attempt to do, many of the workers at Amazon across the country, there's some key contracts coming up in logistics. UPS has a big contract with the Teamsters next year coming up. And so these organizing drives at Amazon, UPS, this is going to have a very important bearing on the landscape of the labor movement for the next several months to years, in fact. But we have to continue to organize. We've also seen a lot of firings from Amazon of kind of the union supporters and organizers. It certainly is intimidation. It is certainly a retaliation. Wholesale. They've also been able to move their challenge to the ALU victory at JFK 8 from the Brooklyn office. They've charged that the NLRB in Brooklyn was very biased towards ALU. So they were able to move their challenge of the vote to Arizona, where they think they may get a better hearing in Arizona. Arizona, keep in mind, is a red state as well. So the NLRB office may really pretty much listen to their challenges. We have to see what exactly happens. The discussion start. I think the challenge and the discussion around that within the NLRB in Arizona is on May 23rd.
Okay.
So we have to see if that's going to be a reversal. But we have to organize all across Amazon. But we have to continue to organize around Starbucks. Starbucks is doing the exact same thing. They're challenging the leadership of Starbucks. Basically, is hiding their benefits for those workers who are not unionizing or in the unionized stores. So they're causing division, divide and conquer among those unionized stores and non-unionized stores, or those who haven't declared yet. So it's going to be very crucial how we organize. And also, I also want to warn that certainly a lot of the workers will look to the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is sniffing around AOU. They're sniffing around the Starbucks workers. And let's be very clear. Biden likes to say that he is a supporter of unions and he's a union man. While at the same time, we got to keep in mind who supports the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, both parties, in fact. Amazon, Starbucks, all the major corporations, they make sure no matter who wins, that they win in the end.
Yep, that's true. Thank you so much for that. And my final question is, so one of Kshama Sawant's famous quotes is that the road for progressives through the Democratic Party leads to a graveyard. And I think we have seen that. we've seen that come to light. So I have to ask, you mentioned strategy, and that's something those of us at RBN, we've been focusing on. We feel that it is time for a different strategy because the Democratic Party is owned by Wall Street, Republican Party is owned by Wall Street. So at the end of the day, you have corporate donors that tell these politicians what to do when they come into DC. We feel we need to move to a strategy where we focus 80% of our time and energy on mutual aid and direct action and 20% of our time on electoral politics. When it comes to electoral politics, we have different opinions about that over at RBN. Some people don't want to vote at all. Some of us feel that, well, if you do vote, you should vote like third party or independent. I also feel that you need to focus more so on these local races, like local elections, because politically, that's where you can implement the most change. I want to hear your opinion about the strategy that has been used, putting progressives through the Democratic Party. How do you feel about that? Or do you feel that it's time to go in a different direction?
The building of a new party will go through a number of processes. It will go through the process and what we're seeing today of those attempting to use the Democratic Party ballot line as a way to kind of heighten the concerns and the struggles of ordinary working people and the poor, right? It will take moments that we're seeing with Nina Turner, as an example, stymied by the Democratic Party. It's not just dark money. That's just one part of it. It's a party, and she said it. It's a party that doesn't want her. And so Nina has to ask the question, why do I continue to bust my head up against a brick wall that won't let me in? And that's something that Nina has to discuss within herself and with her supporters and the overall workers movement. Has to draw out a conclusion to that. The DSA continues to use the Democratic Party ballot line. And we're seeing that in a lot of mixed results, depending on where you are situated. Here in New York, we have some DSA electeds certainly ran on the Democratic Party. Some of them have used kind of grassroots organizing in a very effective way. Zoran Madani is one example who supported the taxi drivers in their struggle to kind of clear out the debt that they were faced with. And he kind of used his office the way Kshama uses her office as a place of organizing and supporting workers in struggle. While at the same time, you have some DSA candidates and electeds who are running, but are not trying to use their office as a bully pulpit for working people and the poor. I think that's also going to come to a head at some point. And so in some ways, I would even say people who are on the heart, and this may be a stunner for some people, but a workers' party may also develop out of splits from the Democratic Party and splits from the Republican Party as well. Because some of the things that Rand Paul said and some of the points that he raised are not false. It's just the fact that the messenger and the undercover nature of the message is not really about organizing genuine working people. It's really to have a go at the Democratic Party. And so you may have some workers who are former Republicans say, you know what, we need something fresh and new. And so I think in that kind of milieu, that's where the conversation develops organically. Now, you do need leadership and you do need forces to kind of heighten. And that's why our petition talks about is not just not running, not supporting the Democratic Party, but also at the same time, we need an independent working class approach. That electoral approach is not about the election. It's really about day-to-day organizing workers who are trying to unionize, organizing around Medicare for all, organizing around the right to organize. That day-to-day organizing where there's no cameras, there's no journalists asking you questions. It's you sitting at a kitchen table with Ma and Pa talking about and politicizing their everyday existence and their life under American capitalism, right, and so-called democracy. And so it is those moments and those kind of ingredients that will begin to develop a political formation, a political party. And I think, if we don't learn the lessons of our abusive relationship, I like to say that our relationship with the Democratic Party is like dealing with the mortician, the grave digger, and the graveyard of social movements. Because when you deal with the Democratic Party, they're preparing you for your death, for your issue to die, for all the things that you're trying to build. Once they grab hold, then they got you. And that's where the movement has to develop. And our work has to also take place. And so that's why every opportunity that we get, we talk about a new party. We talk about when we in struggle with organizers, we say we got to be independent from the two parties. We have to be independent from the organizations that are the appendages of the Democratic Party as well. We have to say no more to the leadership of the Congressional Black Caucus that existed in 1971. And concretely, they are some of the most corrupt Democrats that's operating today. And we talk about the Congressional Black Caucus as the conscience of America. That might have been true in 1971, but that is not true in 2022 right now. Certainly the way they've done what they've done to Nina Turner, and damn sure what they did to Bernie in the last election. So those opportunities are there. The question is, can we develop the leadership and organization to do that work on a day-to-day basis? And what does that look like on the ground? Some of that may look like mutual aid, but some of that may also look like ordinary working people taking ownership of their lives through political organizing, right? And talking to their neighbors and talking to their coworkers and hoping and transforming their union from a union that has leadership that supports corporate America and that has a leadership that says we're going to stand not only for the rights of ordinary working people, we're going to fight back against this attack, this assault of Roe versus Wade. And that's the kind of movement we need to build at this juncture. But we need leadership. Unfortunately, the squad should have been at the forefront of that. But they have vacated and vacillated on that question, which has led us to this moment.
Agreed. I think there's one more question for you. This is from Roger Meadows. Thanks so much for the tip, Roger. What everyone is talking about are unions, but no one is talking about worker co-ops, although I agree unions have their place in providing leverage to workers in the workplace. Worker co-ops actually provide empowerment, and I think this is what people are not seeing because corporate fears us more than unions because we're taking over their companies. So this is for you, Algier. Do you have a strategy on supporting worker co-ops? Thank you so much for that, Roger. I'll get to that one later, Eric.
Okay. Right. I think we have to look at worker co-ops in the sense of how it operates under American capitalism. And sometimes I certainly support the idea of worker co-ops, but at the same time, I have to say that when you're working underneath the kind of the laws of American capitalism, and how to approach kind of worker power we have to look at it in a more serious way. That you can have a worker co-op, but it could easily be attacked and viciously attacked by corporate America in a serious way. We need a multiple prong approach to this question. That worker co-ops, I think, is not the end all to be all, nor do I think just the trade unions itself is the end all to be all. But the trade unions provide us, it's the only lone workers organization, when you really think about that, that allows ordinary working people who are either coming from segregated places in their community, different racial identities, sexual gender identities, can come together and collectively fight in their own interests. That's what the trade union, when it's at its best, can provide. It can supersede those issues and just talk about the basic questions facing ordinary working people. So worker co-ops, and we've seen this. We've certainly in Venezuela, we've seen elements of that as well, and we've seen what has happened to a number of those worker co-ops. Worker co-ops in Italy also as well. So as long as you have as long as you have capitalism as the overarching economic system, you're going to have a hard time. You'll be fighting on multiple fronts just to keep your worker co-op just existing. And that's something I think we have to really examine.
Well said, Elgier. Elgier, thank you so much for coming on. Where can everyone find you or Socialist Alternative? And Eric, can you put the link to Socialist Alternative website in the chat when you get a chance?
Socialistalternative.org. Go to our website. Once again, check out the petition. Dems, no more excuses. We just don't want to collect, signatures. We want to use it as an organizing tool. The same way we used that during our petitioning of Bernie Sanders to continue to run if he was blocked by the Democratic Party. Thousands of people supported that idea. So we are alive to the very crucial questions facing working people. And you can find us certainly on socialistalternative.org. And through there, you can find us in our different branches across the country. And we'll be out there tomorrow at the demonstrations and certainly other activities as we continue to push back against this assault against Roe versus Wade.
Awesome. Elgier, thank you so much for coming back on. You always, every time you come on, you teach us so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Alrighty. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going into our next story. I'm going to go ahead and go into our next story, and then we'll shout out the super chats. So let's go ahead and get started with Mr. Cenk Uygur and Joe Rogan. And by the way, I hope you guys learned a lot tonight from that discussion. Again, definitely follow Socialist Alternative. They're doing really great things. And if you want to get involved and actually do things on the ground, that's the organization you should join. So Cenk Uygur, and actually, Anna Kasparian, had some things to say about a segment that Joe Rogan had recently. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think all of them were at fault in some way, shape, or form in this discussion. Joe Rogan, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian. I'll get into that in just a second. But before I show you that clip, I want to define the word groomer for you, because that is part of the discussion, actually a big part of the discussion. And this is referring to grooming in the slang form. So let's look at the definition of grooming, because this was something I noticed, during that during that discussion, that they didn't seem to get this down per se. So what is grooming? Grooming is when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. Here we go, this part right here. Children and young people who are groomed can be sexually abused, exploited, or trafficked. Anybody can be a groomer. This is important to note before we go into the video. no matter their age, gender, or race. Grooming can take place over a short or long period of time, from weeks to years. Groomers may also build a relationship with the young person's family or friends to make them seem trustworthy or authoritative. Now, having said that, let's go ahead and get into that video. Wanted to tell you that first. So here is a segment from Joe Rogan's show, and TYT is going to comment on it. I'm not going to play this entire video, but there are certain parts that I do want to comment on. So here we go.
That term groomer, a lot of people don't like that term online. They're very upset, but they're real. Right. There are groomers. You don't like it? Do you not like it because you don't want children to be groomed? Or do you not like it because it's a pejorative that's used against the left, which is, I think, more likely? Yeah. Well, here's what's more important. Not have people groom your kids. That's what's more important than you getting uncomfortable with this word because it's used by people on the right.
Joe Rogan doesn't understand why some people would have a problem with the usage of the word groomer, as the right wing in America incessantly uses that type of terminology to inaccurately describe people they disagree with. Mr. I want to protect.
So I do want to go ahead and interrupt here because this is why I wanted to show you the definition first before we go into this video. Because as it said on that site, anyone can be a groomer. It doesn't matter if you're on the left, the right. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your race is. So let's hear this part right here from Joe Rogan one more time.
People groom your kids. That's what's more important than you getting uncomfortable with this word because it's used by people on the right.
So I wanted to point that out. I want people to realize we should not put this as a left thing or a right thing. Anyone can do it. Now, I'm going to fast forward to Cenk's part. You heard part of what Anna had to say. She actually goes on for quite a while, but I want to get to the I want to get to the portion where Cenk comes in. So here we go.
It's completely fallen off, like so embarrassing. It like honestly hurts to watch.
Okay, can we acknowledge hashtag Cenk was right? He's a right winger. He got guest captured, audience captured. He got whatever it was. He got mind captured. So look, let's break it down. It's super simple. He says people are trying to block the use of the word groomer completely.
Who?
Not true.
Yeah, who?
Yeah, not at all true. He made that up. Okay. And
listen to Anna in the background. She's like, who? Yeah. Who? What? Who? She's an owl now. She's an owl. I'll let him finish.
And where did he get it from? Guaranteed it was one of his right-wing friends that told him that, and he doesn't think, so he thought, oh, that must be true. They're trying to block the use of the word. No, Joe, it's very simple. The question is it true or is it not true? Not whether the word should exist or not. So that goes to Anna's point. So if you have a teacher that's actually a groomer, for God's sake, out him, let's fire him. I know it's cancel culture, right? Oh, sometimes it makes sense to fire people, right? Yeah, of course, if a teacher is actually a groomer and is hitting on the kids, of course you should fire him, right? We all agree to that? I don't know, because you might then turn around and call it cancel culture. Okay, so, but if someone is not doing that, and if they're just like, for example, the example you gave, LGBTQ, and you call them a groomer when they're not, can you not see how terrible that is?
So again, I just want to come chime in here again. Like I said, all three of them are wrong here. Like all three of them are wrong. I just want to go ahead and say again, I don't know if Joe Rogan is aware of this or not, but to make a point, this is not something that is an LGBTQ only issue. Anyone can be a groomer. And actually, studies will show you it's usually straight people that are more likely to be groomers. So I sincerely hope that Joe Rogan doesn't think that this is something that comes from just that community. That is not true. anyone can do it. At the same time here, though, I think that Cenk is really milking this for everything that it's worth. He really just wants to fight Joe Rogan. Like he said before, he's really trying to get his attention for whatever reason. I really think he wants Joe Rogan to bring him on his show. I don't know, but it gets worse from here. So let's go back.
You're defaming them, how you're smearing them, and you're doing it based on who they are. You can't see that that's a terrible phenomenon? Okay, then I agree with Anna. Look, Joe Rogan does a podcast. There's a lot of young people listening to that podcast. I don't know if he's sleeping with any of them. I don't know if he's doing a podcast to groom them. So, but I'm sure that Joe Rogan's not going to mind him being called a groomer of young children.
Okay, so this part I feel was disingenuous. I think it's a stretch. I don't think Cenk should have said that. Let's hear that again. Let's hear that again.
Is not doing that. And if they're just like, for example, the example you gave, LGBTQ, and you call them a groomer when they're not, can you not see how terrible that is? How you're defaming them, how you're smearing them, and you're doing it based on who they are. You can't see that that's a terrible phenomenon? Okay, then I agree with Anna. Look, Joe Rogan does a podcast. There's a lot of young people listening to that podcast. I don't know if he's sleeping with any of them. I don't know if he's doing a podcast.
Shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry, but that's going a bit too far. He shouldn't have even insinuated that. That's how rumors get started.
He has to groom them. So, but I'm sure that Joe Rogan's not going to mind him being called a groomer of young children because he doesn't want the word blocked. Do you see how stupid that line of logic is? And the answer is he probably doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. So let's help him out. Let's help him out. Because I mean, apparently outside of his right-wing podcast bubble, he's completely unaware of where the real groomers reside. So let me help you out, Joe. Let's talk about the real groomers. Let's talk.
So I do just want to chime in here and say, I actually don't know what Joe Rogan identifies or where he identifies politically today. I don't know. I do know that he was a supporter of Bernie Sanders in 2020. He came out and endorsed Bernie Sanders' race in 2020. And I do remember he was heavily attacked after doing that. And so was Bernie Sanders. Don't know where he stands today politically. Just want to add that in.
About the fact that it's the right wing in America that is forcing women who have been raped to carry to term that rapist baby, okay? Oh, who cares? Who cares if she got raped? It is the right wing in America, which has historically and probably till this day justifies marital rape. They don't think that a wife can be raped by her husband, okay? They've been defending that for as long as I can remember. It is the right wing in America that has consistently covered up sexual abuse towards students, toward children. In fact, I mean, let's talk about Jim Jordan, who.
And this is where I have to chime in because now she's making this a left-right issue. And one thing I do want to say, it is not just the right that has covered up sexual abuse. It is not just the right that has covered up sexual assault. It is not just the right that has covered up sexual harassment. Let's all go back to Clarence Thomas. Let's remember who it was that would not let Anita Hill's witnesses testify. That was Joe Biden. Now he's supposed to be Democrat. Let's remember that along with Tara Reid, that 10 other women accused Joe Biden of sexual abuse. 10 other women. Now again, he's supposed to be a Democrat. Do you not think that the Democratic Party didn't protect Joe Biden? The protection part, that's not a left-right thing. That doesn't just happen on the right. That doesn't just happen on the left. That happens across all spectrums, whether you are political or not. So this is the problem that I have with this portion, is that Anna is making it seem like this only happens on the right, that this is a right-wing thing. And I feel like that is dangerous rhetoric because that is not true. Talk to children or people who are now adults, but they were abused when they were children. Talk to them Go to some of these discussions. I know, because like I said, I worked with students for a long time. Listen to some of the stories that they have to say about who would listen to them and who covered it up. Now, the first thing people often think of is the Catholic Church. Yes, that is also a problem, but it's not just the Catholic Church. I want to point out people who are famous. One more recent. Let's talk about R. Kelly. Who was covering up the fact that R. Kelly was sleeping with underage girls? Who was covering that up? Was that on the right? So she can't make this just a right-wing thing. And this is the thing about TYT that I've kind of noticed. Again, I don't really watch them anymore. It's been a long time, but someone did send me this. They pretend like sometimes it's just the right that is doing these things. And it's not just on the right. They try to make issues that are really should not be a political issue. Sexual abuse, sexual assault happens regardless if you're political or not. So that's the part I just did. This was cringe to me.
Covered up, allegedly, sexual abuse, sexual misconduct that was carried out by the wrestling coach when Jim Jordan was an employee at Ohio State. Why did he cover up the rape, the alleged sexual abuse of a wrestling coach?
Yeah, she's right about Jim Jordan. She's correct about that. But let's not sit here and pretend like he's the only one in DC that has been guilty of this. Make sure you call out the Democrats that are involved as well. That's my problem with this.
Wrestlers were allegedly going to Jim Jordan asking him for help, and he basically told them to shut up. You like that, groomer? I mean, it seems like Joe Rogan likes to provide cover for those groomers, which makes me question, is Joe Rogan a groomer? Let me give you more. Matt Gaetz, a Republican lawmaker, is being investigated by the Justice Department for paying an underage person for sex.
That is also true, but let's wait and see if she mentions any of these Democrat politicians that have been accused of doing the same thing. Let's wait and see.
17-year-old. Is he a groomer? I don't know. Is he okay with you? Apparently the problem is the LGBTQ community, okay, and the left for asking, hey, can you please stop defaming people who are not groomers as groomers? Can you please stop doing that? But no. Apparently, it's the right wing can do whatever it wants, and Joe Rogan will always provide cover. They're always the good boys and girls. And the left, they're bad. They're so bad. I mean, if I could recall correctly, Cenk, in terms of like, systematically abusing children, a lot of that happened on the right wing with, I don't know, the Catholic Church, stuff like that. No, but it's the left that's the problem, right, Joe? It's the left. And for all the leftists who also love to fillet Joe Rogan because they're so desperate to go on his show and get a few clicks on whatever content they're putting out there, please.
Dude, doesn't Cenk want to go on? Didn't Cenk say he wanted to go on Joe Rogan? That's a bad place to pause this video. Let me go back just a second. I want to hear what she said about the Catholic Church. Give me just a second. There was something said here. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
So bad. I mean, if I could recall correctly, Cenk, in terms of like, systematically abusing children, a lot of that happened on the right wing with, I don't know, the Catholic Church.
Yep.
Okay. She said a lot of that happened on the right wing with, I don't know, the Catholic Church. So yes, that is a problem with the Catholic Church. But I hope that Anna doesn't think that everyone that's Catholic is on the right. Because that's the thing. I think people think, I don't want people to assume that because someone is a Christian, I don't want people to assume that that means they're automatically on the right. And I'll give you examples. Cornel West has been very vocal about his faith. Chris Hedges has been very vocal about his faith. They're not on the right. Sherry said Anna is a moron. I just wanted to put that out there Because I think some people do think that. I think some people do think that everyone on the left is like an atheist and they're not religious at all. That's not true. And I think they think that everyone on the right is religious, and that's not true either. So let's go back in.
Stuff like that. No, but it's the left that's the problem, right, Joe? It's the left. And for all the leftists who also love to fillet Joe Rogan because they're so desperate to go on his show and get a few clicks on whatever content they're putting out there, please grow up, grow a pair, and learn how to stand up for people who have no power. It's unbelievable.
So our members are all saying the same thing. Nostra Science wrote in, Catholic Church. But by the way, guys, it's not just the Catholic Church. Almost all the religious leaders, as a percentage, have done these type of things. And so
it's not just even with religion, it's not just religion. It happens on sports teams. It happens with like look at what happened to the women, the gymnasts who came forward that after all those years they were sexually abused. All those years. It's not just teachers, it's not just schools, it's not just churches, you have sports as well, you have entertainment. Let's talk about some of these child actors that have been on Mickey Mouse and Kids Incorporated. Some of them have came forward when they became adults about abuse that they encountered when they were kids on that show. If we want to really talk about people being groomed and kids being sexually abused, one of the first places you need to be looking at is Hollywood. Hollywood is notorious for that. And they have tried to cover it up for years. And when we want to talk about right wing covering up these abuses, look at all those people in Hollywood who tried to cover up and protect for Harvey Weinstein for years. They were on the left, they were liberal. Those were liberals who tried to cover that up. Let's remember you had people like Corey Feldman who came forward years ago that tried to tell people what was going on in Hollywood and what they were doing to children actors, that he himself was abused. I feel like the focus is in the wrong spot here. They're pointing at like Joe Rogan. Let's look at Hollywood. Just something to think about. Again, a lot of the actors, in fact, most of them in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry, most of them are not on the right. They don't mention that, though, in this discussion.
So whether it's the Muslim fundamentalists in Afghanistan that have the Hazara boys, whether it's the Catholic Church that had tons and tons of actual groomers, pedophiles, they covered it up, or you get into, and it's certainly true of mainline Christians, every single religion has it because they give them unchecked power. They say, no. You can't question those authoritarian leaders. Okay, just like the right wing wants with Trump and other political leaders. In terms of the politics, there's no question Dennis Hastert, former Speaker of the House for the Republicans, was a literal child molester, went to jail for it. Jim Jordan unquestionably covered up child molestation, according to the allegations of dozens of the wrestlers at his school. And so, I mean, that is as close to a definition of groomer as possible. But the word originated is in terms of a line of attack from the alt-right all the way back when they used a fake charge against Sam Cedar when he was on MSNBC. And we showed you at the time, the right wing saying online, let's just call all of our opponents pedophiles. It doesn't matter if they are, it'll just make them toxic and it'll show up at the top of their Google search. So it is a coordinated strategy to smear people who are not child molesters while actually protecting the worst of the worst, including Donald Trump, who very brazenly said publicly, Jeffrey Epstein likes them young, ha 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 ha. Well, Donald Trump knew for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a child molester and he laughed about it. You want to talk about a groomer?
But so did Bill Clinton. And apparently Obama was also on Epstein's jet. Make sure you mention all those Democrats that were also friends with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, let's be real here.
So, and now look, the last thing that is really important. You see what he said there at the end? Oh, the teachers are bad. I told you they were gonna do a war on teachers. They are. Everything's being blamed on the teachers, not the bankers, not the oil executives, not all those guys who are funneling tons and tons of bribes to our politician. But the real problem in the country is teachers. That's the kind of monsters these people are. But
Bruh, you accepted $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg. Come on. Like, how are you going to talk about bribes?
then you get to the LGBTQ community and he's like, oh, you think it doesn't happen? Oh, these guys, they do all these things like masturbating in front of the students and they do it under the guise of being LGBTQ. Do they, Joe? Do they? Show me one story where that happened. Where a teacher masturbated in front of the class and they said, it's okay, I'm LGBTQ. And then they weren't fired. Everyone's like, oh, it's okay, he's LGBTQ. Show me one story, you effing liar. That never, ever, ever happened. And by the way, I know for a fact that the great majority of the pedophiles, whether they're in the school or not, and in the churches, are straight. Is that the impression your audience got? No. Your audience got the impression that it's gay people that are doing it because you told them that, even though it's the exact opposite of what is true. Now, are you really concerned about the kids, or are you more concerned about smearing LGBTQ people and going, oh, it's the gay people that are doing it, even though it's a goddamn lie? You're a hateful person, and you've always hated the trans community. Now you spread your hate to more, and you put out that poison every day. And now smearing all of them as groomers. You disgust me.
Ouch. I think Jink's a little upset. I don't know what to say. Look, I said at the beginning of this segment that all three of them have this wrong in some way, shape, or form. I don't think this is a left-right issue. I think it happens across all political spectrums. I also will say, though, also to Joe Rogan, no, this is not something that's just an LGBTQ thing. I wish some people would just, not everybody, but some people do have this mindset. They believe that people that are LGBTQ are creepy or freaky or whatever, or they don't want to have their kids around them because something's going to happen. Like, I think people need to get that out of their head and stop thinking that. I don't think that's cool. But I will also say that in reference to who is usually doing this, straight people do this as well. And I think we need to stop making those assumptions. So I will say that towards like Joe Rogan. Jink is very fired up here, really upset. I think this is a little bit deeper than that, though. I think this goes deeper than this whole groomer issue with Joe Rogan and who Joe Rogan had on his show. I think this is deep-rooted hate. Like, I think it's stuck way down in the pit of Jink's stomach. And anytime, I guess, Joe Rogan does something that is they find to be ridiculous, Jink goes all in. But he is really, really angry here. But again, like I said, out of all the industries to call out, you're calling out the right. You should have called out Hollywood.
So you
listen,
do it,
they've
do it
opened
back.
the floodgates. Yeah, they opened the floodgates. The right wing has created this trend of referring to anyone they don't like, anyone they disagree with, as a rapist, as a groomer. Okay, let's have at it then. Let's have at it.
Have you guys heard about this trend? I haven't heard about this trend. I don't know. Let me know in the chat. Let me know if you've heard of this trend happening. I have not heard of this before. Also, I mean, I live in Massachusetts too, so just keep that in mind. But I haven't heard of that trend.
Sure. Anyone we don't like, let's go ahead and just call them a groomer.
Yeah, hey, I don't want to block the word.
Garbage argument by Rogan. Absolute garbage.
I don't want to block the word, Anna. Okay.
I'm just going to stop it for a second to let the speed catch up.
And so, Joe.
No, let's use it more.
Yeah.
Let's use it more.
So
let's use it exactly how the right wing uses it.
Anna, I got a last question for you. Look, given that Joe Rogan seems to be purposely blaming people who didn't do it, I wonder if he's covering up for things he did. It's as a
Could it be?
distraction.
I don't know.
Maybe that's why he's blaming gay people in general for things they didn't ever do. I mean, you probably maybe have a guilty conscience and you probably want somebody to look somewhere else. It does make you really wonder, is Joe Rogan a groomer?
That's not fair. That's an assumption. That's an assumption. You guys see how these things start? So now people, I don't know how many people saw this episode. I'll go back and check. But everybody that saw this episode now, whether it's their audience members or other people who just saw it passed on through other people, like someone passed it on to me. But I just feel like, why would you make that assumption? I don't think that's fair. Look, you don't have to like Joe Rogan. I don't even watch Joe Rogan. I told people this before. People are like, you shouldn't come out and defend Joe Rogan. Like, dude, I've only seen 4 episodes of Joe Rogan my entire life. Only 4. And I didn't finish all of them because they were too long for me. But I don't think it's fair to sit up there and call someone that, and you have no proof, you have no evidence. This is how rumors get started. Look, I'm critical of people, right? I admit that. But I don't go around making these kind of assumptions about people unless I have some evidence, unless I have some proof. This is like a smear. Listen to this.
Let's go ahead and just call them a groomer.
Yeah, hey, I don't want to block the word.
Garbage argument by Rogan. Absolute garbage.
I don't want to block the word, Anna. Okay? And so, Joe.
No, let's use it more.
Yeah.
Let's use it more.
So
let's use it exactly how the right wing uses it.
Anna, I got a last question for you. Look, given that Joe Rogan seems to be purposely blaming people who didn't do it, I wonder if he's covering up for things he did. It's as a distraction.
I don't know.
Maybe that's why he's blaming gay people in general for things they didn't ever do. I mean, you probably maybe have a guilty conscience and you probably want somebody to look somewhere else. It does make you really wonder, is Joe Rogan a groomer? Has he done this to little children?
This is wrong.
We're just asking the question.
We're just asking questions, and it's a word.
And I
free
hope
speech.
He's not offended.
A free
I hope
speech.
he's not offended.
I'm
Don't
gonna
be
keep
offended,
asking
Joe.
you.
We're just asking the question. We're just wondering if you're a groomer. Just wondering.
Look, I don't know.
We gotta go.
I don't know how many children Joe Rogan might have molested.
What?
I don't know what the number is. I don't know if it's in the dozens. I don't know why he's.
Hold up. I'm sorry. When I watched this video.
Is Joe Rogan a groomer?
When I watched this video, I didn't get to the end. I got interrupted a couple of times. That happens with me for some reason. Every time I'm trying to watch something, somebody calls me or texts me or someone's like, hey, I need something. So I didn't hear this part. So that was you're seeing my first time reaction about that part.
Has he done this to little children?
We're just asking the question.
We're just asking questions, and it's a word.
And I
free
hope
speech.
he's not offended.
A free
I hope
speech.
he's not offended.
I'm
Don't
gonna
be
keep
offended,
asking
Joe.
you.
We're just asking the question. We're just wondering if you're a groomer. Just wondering.
Look, I don't know.
We gotta go.
I don't know how many children Joe Rogan might have molested.
No, that's not okay. That is not okay. Somebody call Joe Rogan and I wonder if he's seen this.
I don't know what the number is. I don't know if it's in the dozens. I don't know why he's covering it up so much, but people have a right to know how much of a groomer and pedophile is Joe Rogan. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Thanks for watching The Young Turks.
Look, you don't have to like Joe Rogan, but that is not okay. That is not okay. Someone just mentioned Joe Rogan should sue Swanky Tias. Like that's slander. Why would you do that? I don't care if you have so much resentment and hate for Joe Rogan in your gut that it just makes you want to pull your hair out. You don't say things like that about people if you have no proof and no evidence. I don't care if you're trying to be funny or not. That shit's not funny. Sherry said this is defamation 101. This is horrible. All right. That's my take on that. You guys know how many subscribers they have at TYT? Let's see how many people saw this video. $62,051 views. 62,051 people saw this video. That's awful. I wonder if anyone said anything in the comments. Let me see. Where's the comment? Oh, here they are. Oof. Salt. Oh, boy, boy, boy. Oh, boy. Wellington Pena. No wonder I stopped watching TYT. Jeez, this. I wonder how many people watch to the very end of the video. Because that's what I was telling you guys. I didn't get to the very end until just now. All right. We're getting to the point where we're going to do the call-in segment of the show. That's awful, you guys. That is awful. Like I said, you don't have to like Joe Rogan, but that is not okay. Let me go ahead and I'm going to put the call-in room link in the chat, and I'm actually going to pin this at the top of the chat. I am going to take a quick 5-minute break. I'm sorry, TMI, but I really have to pee and I need to get some tea. So no, I don't have a beer tonight, you guys. It's been a long day and I have to get up pretty early tomorrow for a birthday thing. But Eric, if you can, if you don't mind to read the super chat over here, and I'll be right back, and then we can get started with the call-in portion.
All right.
Eric.
All right. We'll see you shortly. All right. So Sabby's taking a brief break. Yeah, we'll shift these around, and we have a lot of chats and super chats. I'm gonna have to do my Steph Zamorano impression here. But first, I just gotta say, whenever I hear Cenk talk, all I can hear is him just saying, "Preposterous liar." And yes, he is. And I think Rogan should only sue if he can sue TYT out of existence. Otherwise, he's just giving them attention. But let's see. Excuse me. Let's see what we get here for some super chats. And these may be going back a little ways in the show. Let's see. Thanks, William Brooks. Government sees its citizens not as wards to care for, but rather as enemies to be subjugated. We got from AJF Milan. Thanks for this chat. If any current Democratic Party members mentions the words access or affordability in relation to any social service, that's them not wanting to deliver those programs in a universal way. Well put, AJF. Thanks for that. And David York, thanks for the super sticker. We've got Andrew Matthews. Thanks for this chat. It's tough because change doesn't happen overnight, but there are some things like healthcare and climate change where we can't afford to wait. Thanks for that, Andrew. From AJF, thank you. We all should know that Obama admitted in a Univision Spanish channel interview that his policies reflect those of the Republicans in the 1980s. Yeah, I remember that interview, and he just basically calls himself a centrist Republican. Thanks for that, AJF. Got from I'm Be Jammin'. Thanks for this, rock on. Thank you very much. Let's see. Let's look at this one from Andrew, thanks for this one. That Cenk is now Joker. That's a good one. Cenk is now Joker. Anna is Harley Quinn. Thank you for that. From Andrew again, thank you. Isn't Rogan pro-choice? Why are they attacking him for that? And I've watched TYT from 2016 to 2019. They definitely call anything bad right-wing. Yeah, it also makes me think of that video that Jimmy Dore's assistant there made, where she just calls everything right-wing. I'm so right-wing. It's right-wing. Thanks for this one as well from Andrew. Anna, you're not making a good case for the left. I don't see a lot of people watching this and thinking, these leftists seem cool, Joker and Harley. Yeah, and of course they don't care. I mean, they're just desperate. The desperation is showing. From Colin, hey Colin, thanks for this one. Anna was on the Joe Rogan Experience in 2013. That was a long time ago. Thank you for that, Colin. From Andrew, I believe in God. I serve at my church. Am I not allowed to be on the left? Cuomo, Clinton, Biden, John Conyers, Anthony Weiner. Thank you for that, Andrew. We got from Cryosynth. TYT are getting into the defamation zone again. Yes, they know about being there. From Donnie, who loved bowling. Thanks for this. I can't listen to these two. I feel you, but it's like a bad medicine we have to take sometimes to see what's out there. From Andrew, didn't see them call Joe a pedo. Cross the line. I think that's a good point there, Andrew. Thank you. And one more from the super chats from Donnie. Lawyer up, Bubba. Yeah, they TYT may be hearing about this one again. Thanks for that, Donnie. All right, let's see if we can bring up what's happening over here on the fins. Let me just do a couple clicks here and there on our little system setup here. Come on, you thing. Here it comes. This isn't working right. Give me a second. Ooh. Sorry, just having some technical difficulties. Oh, here it comes. All right. We've got, let's put that in the stream. Let's make it big. Let's scroll up a bit because we had some from Roger and a couple others. This one goes back to when we had our guest on. Roger was, I think, here addressing our guest saying, dude, you in New York State? I thought you were out there in Washington with Shama. Let's get together. I'm out here in Long Island. I was just up in Albany 3 times in the past 3 weeks. Let's get this New York Health Act, New York Public Banking Act, and Democracy Preservation Act passed. Also, take co-op ride in New York City. Drive co-op in New York City, by the way. And, all right, we have also from Roger. Damn, another word I can no longer use. KBJ nomination ruined another common, innocent word. Before, as far as I was concerned, it was seeing the barber or a shave for your children to look presentable when going out, because you don't want people thinking that you don't care about how you or your children look. This is unfair. Now it feels icky if I say I had a child and said I have to teach her grooming techniques. That's a fair point, Roger. And also here from Roger. Speaking of grooming, remember what the nation assassinated Malcolm X over. And we also had here from One Love on Rockfin. Thanks for this. I'm gay and I don't want the likes of Cenk and Anna defending me nor my community. Has their audience forgotten about the sexist, misogynist bestiality? Cringe fest, Cenk and Anna had on a regular basis early on in their shows. Yeah, that's a good point, and thanks for that comment. One love on the rock fins. All right. I think let's put these in the right place. I think I got through the things here. We've had a busy day.
Yeah, no. Did you read this one?
No, you go ahead.
Greg said grooming is an issue in gaming communities in which it's not a political thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's Black said shit libs love using the LGBTQ community as a political football. Wow, wow, wow. All right, I think we're
And
ready.
should we mention quickly what you're up to today?
I can do it at the end of call-in. I want to get started because I'm already behind.
Sabby was on the road, but we'll get to that. All right, let's see if we can get the thing going. All right, you started the room?
I have now started the room, yes. So I'll do my invite. Doobie-doobie-doo. I can't believe, man, I just can't believe they said that. Like, I'm just still like in shock. That is not cool.
Bring Shameless to a new level?
Yeah, I mean, you can't you shouldn't say things like that about people. That's not cool. Whether you like them or not. Sorry, but not cool.
Okay, you can do the speaker invite.
All right, I just invited you to speak.
You invited yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, callers can start queuing up. Let's see. I think if I do this part.
All right, we already got someone in the queue. All right, guys, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me on? Oh, I'm muted on call in.
Oh, my bad.
All right, guys, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me on call in the call in app? All right, I see thumbs up. Let's get this show on the road. All right. So here we go. Welcome to Sab's podcast on Call-In. This is episode 11. Squad approves $40 billion to Ukraine. The squad has voted to give $40 billion to Ukraine when Americans need help here at home. What are your thoughts? So I'm going to go ahead and take the first caller, and that is Johnny. You're on the mic. You just have to unmute.
Maybe I'll have.
I can hear you, but you're a little spotty. Oh, looks like you dropped off. Okay, I'm going to take the next caller, which is Andrew. You're on the mic. You just got to unmute.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Nice. Usually don't have such good service here, so that's cool. How's it going?
It's going, Andrew. It is going. It's been an interesting week.
Yeah, just like politically or everything.
Politically,
I don't know.
it's been really interesting, but I definitely want to get your take on this. How do you feel about the squad joining along with the corporate Democrats and voting to give $40 billion to Ukraine?
I think it's to be expected at this point. There's maybe some question that Ilhan Omar would oppose something like this, but I mentioned actually on a different call-in earlier today that I believe she did vote, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought she did vote for, or at least kind of provide safe passage for a bill that it might have been the National Defense Authorization or something, but it kind of allowed for more bombing into Somalia, which I believe is her home country. And it's like, if she could be coerced into doing that, I have no faith that she'll stick up for anything that all of those people claim to support. And also, I've also been forgetting the name lately, but I remember today. I think it's called. It's called something consulting. I can't even remember now. God damn it! I had it literally in my head. Now it's gone. But Primo Radicals reported on it. Others on the left, kind of Mediascape, have reported on it. It's this consulting firm that has AOC and I think Biden's campaign and Beto O'Rourke and some other despicable people. And it's just more and more. I think we should kind of treat them as like a media creation, which I don't think anyone on Revolutionary Blackout has trouble doing. But I think that if people are interested in still doing some kind of electoral project, I would say build a third party. I don't have any. I've seen you and Jay do a lot of good coverage of the People's Party, kind of debunking that kind of scam. So that's a kind of a roadblock right now, I feel like, for maybe some people on the left who might already be really hardcore into them or a little bit burned out because they supported them and then realized that it was kind of a fake. But I still think I'm down here in Mexico, and it's like there's a new party that took 6 years to build that took the presidency and the whole Congress. They just nationalized the whole lithium mining industry. They tried to nationalize the entire energy sector a couple of weeks ago, and they're building like high-speed rail, hospitals. So it's actually kind of changed my mind a little bit back from like we should strictly do mutual aid and syndicalism to build unions and things to, well, maybe we can kind of go more 50-50. But anyways, I talked for a long time, so I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll mute myself.
No, you brought up some really great points. And I think that I want people to understand that I do understand like there's a lot of issues with MPP. And I want people to realize that that doesn't have to be our final stop or our only other option. I think it's important to support independent candidates who are also running. They're not affiliated with the party. In fact, Roger Meadows, something he said multiple times is that the parties are a big part of the problem, right? So do we really need political parties? But I know that's not something that we can remove right now. But I think we need to focus more so on these independent candidates. There's a number of them that are running. And then also you still have candidates going through the Green Party. I know the Green Party has its issues as well. Honestly, every political party that we have in this country has issues, to be honest with you. So I think, however, the Green Party has done really well in local elections. Like they are successful winning races locally, just not so much on the national level. So I think that we do need to remember that there are people that are still running as independents. And I also think, and I mentioned this last time as well, I think we need to focus on trying to take over the Green Party. I think they need a lot of help with marketing and communications. I feel like their strategy needs a lot of work. They don't promote themselves or their candidates the way that they could. They don't use social media effectively as much as they could. You could honestly get a group of college students and have them do the marketing and promotion, and they would do such a better job. I think back to like those two, I think those were high school students that were helping Mike Gravel. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think they also still run the Gravel Institute that kind of tweets and puts out videos, kind of, sort of left propaganda videos that are, most of the time they seem decent videos. They seem like a good bunch of kids. Maybe I might have some disagreements, but yeah, they did a pretty stellar job getting Mike Gravel's name back out into the universe one last time.
Yeah, you need someone who knows how to use these platforms in an effective manner, someone who is familiar with TikTok, someone who knows how to beat the algorithm. A lot of the younger people know how to do that. You need someone that's really active on Twitch. That's another platform I feel like some of these politicians should be utilizing that they're not utilizing. If you really want to get young people to come out and support you, you need to go on Twitch. So those are just like some of the suggestions that I have. But I definitely hear you in reference to like the mutual aid, and Case Study QB brought up something recently that I think is a really good idea. He said that he thinks that politicians should actually have some type of mutual aid organization or platform. So even if they lose, they've still like raised money for people in the community and they're still able to help the community.
That's a pretty great idea. I think that was a big bummer after the 2020 Bernie campaign. In 2016, I wasn't really like politically all that active. I was somewhat aware I did vote for Bernie, but I didn't really put any kind of effort into it. But in 2020, I did, and then to see like the fact that he had like a ground game in every state that just collapsed afterwards was a big bummer. Like there was so much people could accomplish still with that infrastructure that's just gone now. And that's the other thing too. I wanted to say, like, I definitely agree. People need to be, if they're doing campaigns, especially at a regional or a national level, they got to be savvy with their marketing. But at the same time, like with the case with Morena in Mexico, one of the things that they kind of tout as one of their biggest like strategies to win all of these seats in Congress and the presidency is that they did it like really meticulous, like mathematically. Basically, they counted every single subsection of electoral districts in the country and saw how many people are registered in this district. Okay, we're gonna get like confirmation from people that we've built good relationships with, and ask them to kind of help work on the platform for what what is our policy going to be, and then had them, try to get like 70% of the people to commit to coming out. So then if even they had a big bunch of people bail, they still would be winning that district. And that seems to be, from some people I've talked to, like one of the things they credit the most, other than like that they have a good platform and that the public was completely done with the couple of parties that had been in power for decades before. That was something that they really seem to think was extremely valuable. So I think actually sometimes I feel like campaigns can definitely focus too hard on that. And then last thing I'll say that you brought up is for independent candidates and Greens, I never thought about having like the 10 demands that people put together during the rebellion after George Floyd's murder. Be interesting if there was just a platform that an independent politician could run on, and a candidate could run on and say like, I'm for this platform, but it's not a party. Because that would also circumvent like nationwide FEC regulations around how to run your campaign, et cetera. If it was a bunch of independent people running on just a platform that and they were just fundraising on their own, that would be very interesting. And then I've heard Nick mention it before. You mentioned it just now, like taking over the Green Party. I think it sounds good because they have ballot access in like 30 states. So if there was enough overwhelming influx of people and they were able to kind of undo some of the corruption that people might have heard about, if you were listening to like the Convo Couch or Nico House talking about Howie Hawkins kind of just having them hand him the nomination in 2020, it's not a good sign, but it doesn't seem like it's like a death warrant for the party necessarily. It seems like it could still be a good vehicle.
Well said. Andrew, thanks so much for calling in. I'm going to go to the next caller. All right, so
For
Cool
sure.
Blue.
Thanks for giving me a minute.
Anytime. Cool Blue, you're next. You just have to unmute. Just got to hit unmute. Hello.
Are you able to hear me?
I am.
I was touching the wrong mute. There's like a mute on my icon, and then there's a mute below. This is the interface or whatever. In response to this topic, I happen to look at roll call, which is, the United States House of Representatives. And of course, all U.S. House Democrats who participated in the vote voted yes. And there were 57 Republicans who voted no. And I knew about this. I just was interested in finding out some specific names of the Republicans who did not. And the amusing thing to me is that a number of the Republicans who said no are Republicans who are often made fun of by the Democrats, to basically portray these particular Republicans as being quote unquote dangerous. To name four of them, I'll name them in alphabetical order according to their state. It's from Colorado, there's Lauren Boebert. From Florida, there's Matt Gaetz. From Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And from North Carolina, Madison Cawthorn, who, some fellow Republican colleagues are trying to drive him out of Congress. Now, I agree with these four people with their vote for no. I live in Michigan, and right now, the best bellwether states are Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. They voted for the presidential winners over the last four cycles, and they're likely going to do it again in 2024. And they're going to be instrumental in this year's midterm elections when everything is over with. There's currently 14 congressional districts in Michigan, going down to 13. And the current delegation is even 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats. And 1 Republican from Michigan, Bill Huizenga, I think, I'm not good with the pronunciation of his name. It's Huizenga. He was the only one from Michigan who voted no. So, I'm more and more time passes, I'm more and more solidified in my decision not to vote for the Democrats in general elections. And this is just, one more reminder of why I'm making the right choice nowadays. That's pretty much going to be all I can say for my call. But of course, please respond if you'd like.
Absolutely. I think the 4 Republicans that you just mentioned, like, that doesn't surprise me. And that being said, they basically did what the squad was supposed to do. And this is the thing. You have those 4 Republicans that, people do consider them to be the hostile ones. Don't get me wrong. I don't usually agree with them on anything. I'm just going to be honest with you. However, I agree with them on this vote. But at the same time, we do have to realize that if Donald Trump were in office and he was doing these things that Joe Biden was doing, and he was trying to give more aid to Ukraine, they would vote along with Donald Trump. They would vote in support of that. So again, this is all like a left, right, it's all a facade. And I think that we wanted the squad to go in and push back like this, to react this way. And of course, obviously, they're not doing that. But right now, they are letting Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rand Paul in the Senate, they're letting them outleft them on war. Even though I know this is 100% down party lines, it's all about the party, but still, it's the optics. It looks bad. And it's like, where is that fight that they were supposed to bring? They can't even vote the way that they're supposed to vote. They go along with the establishment. So what I have been telling people is that why vote for them again? Like, I know I'm not voting for them. It doesn't make any sense. They have basically become corporate politicians. And I don't understand how someone like Ilhan Omar can actually sit back there and be okay with this when she is from a country, she's from Somalia, she's from a country that the United States government is destroying. So she knows. And if I was her, why aren't you speaking up? And I know she wrote a letter to Joe Biden, but why aren't you speaking up and being vocal on every news outlet possible about how the United States government is giving more money to Europeans, but they refuse to aid people in Somalia? They refuse to aid people in Yemen. They refuse to aid people in Afghanistan. They are starving people in those countries. And I think we all know what the difference is here. So I think that it's so frustrating to me that this is why the whole identity politics thing does not work. This is why when people say, look, you have people that look like you that are in Congress now, this is why it means absolutely nothing. And it meant absolutely nothing under Barack Obama as well, because we get people in there who represent marginalized people in this country, and then they don't even fight for us. They go along with the establishment. They do exactly what they want them to do. Sorry, Cool Blue.
Thank you.
I'm a little heated. It pisses me off. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you for taking my call again.
You are welcome. All right. Johnny, I think we're going to try to get you on now. Okay.
Hey, Sabrina, how you doing?
I hear you.
Oh, nice. There we go. Colin's behaving now. The old IT trick of closing the app and reopen it works wonders. I'm telling you.
We should do that with the United States.
Give it the old restart. Like, see if it works.
No, every time IT used to come and visit me, because I always had computer problems at work, every time IT would come and visit, have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? We should do that with the US.
It's so sad how many times it works, doesn't it? Software. Software just doesn't behave.
So what's your
thanks for taking my call
on all of this? Yeah.
Appreciate you taking my call. I sent you a rant about a week ago, and man, boy, like the 40 billion with no questions asked, and nobody voted against it. That's crazy. Glenn Greenwald was going off on it, and he's right too. Like, that's so much money for like just like no questions asked. My God, how could what do these people think their job is? You know, and that you know what it is. At this point, we have to make them afraid. Like they have to lose. Somebody in the squad has to go down because they're just not afraid of like the voters.
Yep.
Republicans are afraid of the voters. Like Democrats aren't. We're going to have to make them lose. I mean, I hate to like just be like, sorry, you need a new job. But like somebody from either the squad. I mean, poor Nina Turner's clearly already getting it. Like she didn't even get a chance. You know what I mean? We didn't even get her. She didn't even get in there to like, you know, actually give it a shot. But like the other ones are clearly useless, and it's hard to believe that Nina Turner was going to do anything different because she was complaining about the Republicans the whole time. She didn't have a bad word to say about the Progressive Caucus. Those are the ones who knifed her in the back, and she's got nothing to say about them. Like, why don't you oppose the people who are supposed to be your friends? Doesn't that hurt? I mean, these are the people you've been riding with for years, and they're just going to turn and drop you? I mean, that's rotten. I mean, maybe the race was unwinnable, but like, I mean, that was just awful. I mean, they just dropped that poor woman. Like, she's been dedicated to the cause for 6 years now, at least since 2016, if not earlier. And they just dropped her. I tell you what, I hate Jayapal more than any of them. Because, like, she was the one with the most power. She's supposed to be the head of the Progressive Caucus. You know, they all like to play follow the leader. And like, what does Jayapal do? Writes a great Medicare for all bill and then like crumples it up and throws it in the trash and never looks at it again. And then just says whatever Joe Biden wants, whatever Joe Manchin wants. I gave you a. I should actually address what I sent you the other day, right? Because I sent you a big rant the other day, and it's like they won't oppose. Like obviously, like a lot of people, like I want to say like the Sam Cedar crowd. They want to be like, oh, the left is so weak, we can't do anything. But it's like, you have veto power. You can stop stuff. Yep. And the thing is like, you have to be willing to shut down legislation. Like, what are you willing to shut down and sacrifice in order to get what you want? Like, are you going to stop a Supreme Court pick? You know what I mean? Are you going to stop a bipartisan infrastructure bill? Are you going to deny Nancy Pelosi the speakership just because? Like, why didn't they just deny her the speakership? Just for whatever reason. Don't even ask for anything. Just be like, no, you can't have the speakership anymore. You know what I mean? Like, let them come to the negotiating table and come to you. Like, force the vote should have been just like, no, we would like someone else besides Nancy Pelosi. And you're right, and it's crazy. Like, it turned out to be like the pivotal moment when they had leverage and they didn't use it. Like a lot of these votes we complain about, like the 40 billion, it wouldn't have made a difference either way, but they can't even give us symbolism. They won't even give us the symbolism of voting against it. It doesn't actually matter. Bernie, like, you know what I mean? Like, these people aren't giving us any even symbolism anymore. They can't even give us that because it would embarrass like Biden. And like, they're willing to go down with a sinking ship. Like, Democratic leadership is embarrassing and they're losing and the squad doesn't care. They won't opportunistically see the writing on the wall and jump ship. Like, at least the Trump people are like, all right, we gotta do something different than Mitch McConnell. Like, a lot of Republican voters don't like Mitch McConnell. I mean, I talk to Republicans and they don't like him. And like, you know, they're looking for candidates that do other stuff, that vote differently, that think differently, that talk differently. Democrats won't even do that. They won't vote against Nancy Pelosi. It's crazy. We don't have anybody in the Senate. I mean, Bernie gave up. Bernie gave up in 2020. He had his chance. You know, he didn't want to oppose Joe Biden. That's the end of it for him. I mean, we have to start looking for. So I'm looking at my rant that I gave you a week ago when I was mad, and you're right. We have to start looking for opportunities to build actual alliances and actual legislation. Like, we're not going to get everything we want. I mean, obviously, the left has a whole agenda that it wants to try to accomplish. And we have to, like, pick one or two things and go for them. And I actually do think the antitrust crowd is kind of making fools of us at this point, right? They've gotten Republicans on board with this. And we couldn't even get if we had just picked a $15 minimum wage, that would have had the widest dated, basic impact on people's lives. There was an Oxfam study that came out within the last few weeks that said something like 30 or 40% of the workforce makes under $15 an hour. Like, think about that. That's crazy, isn't it? I mean, you're in Massachusetts with me, right, Sabrina? I mean, We're in Massachusetts. $15 is not that hard to find here. I don't think the minimum wage is quite there yet. I mean, I know you're from South Carolina, and that's a different ball game. But like, to think that 30 to 40% of the country just doesn't make 30 grand a year.
Yep.
And that's what it roughly equates to. And you know what I mean? And people are surviving off that.
And some of
like,
those
that's
are
concrete.
Yeah, I just want to
That's
say
concrete benefits we could have delivered to people.
Right. For people who don't know, some of those positions are professional positions that don't make $30,000 a year. You have teachers in this country that don't make $30,000 a year. It depends on the state you live in. And so so you have all these people that went to college. Yeah, went to college, got a degree, took out student loans, and take this $25,000 salary.
You're in charge of the kids, and like, you don't make 30 grand. Like, you're eating canned tuna.
Mm-hmm. No,
like,
it's
come
just
on. What are we doing to people? And they won't fight for it. Like, nobody's willing to sacrifice anything in Congress for it. They won't take any. And that's where I kind of want to go after people. I actually don't think the squad is bought. I think they're just afraid. Like, they just don't have any courage. Like, you have to go out there and be like, no, Biden, you can't get your bipartisan infrastructure bill. Sorry. Like, what are you going to do for me? Give me my $15. I told you I wanted 15. Give me my 15. Now, the rest of the progressive caucus wants to go flake off and fold, so it's kind of hard. But, like, they did have that leverage at the force the vote point where Jimmy Dore kicked up a fuss and Brianna Joy Gray gave, like, the highbrow intellectual case for it, which no one had ever considered. Because no one on the left actually does, like, power politics. Like, how can we actually have an impact, have influence? We're just so used to being weak and uninfluential and not having a prayer. Like, not having a say, like, trying to get in the room. Like, we're so obsessed with being in the room and, like, getting attention from people in power. And it's like Jimmy Dore and Brianna Joy Gray made the case, and so many people that were, like, Democrats, liberalish, somewhere in between, just looked at them making the case on force the vote, and were just, like, confused by it. And yeah, have you heard Brianna Joy Gray say, like, there were people that were like, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
I just find that remarkable.
People aren't used to.
Like, do you have a plan to win? Like, what's your plan?
Honestly, I think a lot of them just want to fundraise. Like, I really do. Like,
that does seem to be, like, the core purpose of why the Democratic Party exists as a functional organizational, like, group, organized institution today, is just to fundraise. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's just all about money. And I mean, and here we are again. I mean, we have people in this country hearing about the baby formula shortage, but we can give $40 billion to Ukraine.
Yeah, that's crazy. You see the Glenn Greenwald summed it up on his show, if people haven't watched that, where Marjorie Taylor Greene makes a fuss about the baby formula. Rightfully so. I mean, the lady's crazy, don't get me wrong. But, like, she got it right. What are you going to do, you know? And then Jamie Raskin, hardcore Russiagator, was like, no, you're using Russian propaganda talking points? Like, dude, have you been to a supermarket? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's
Like
pretty
I go to the
bad.
supermarket, the baby formula is locked. I mean, you're in Massachusetts. The baby formula is locked up behind a like a locked case.
Yep.
Like my kids are 7 and 11. I don't have to worry about that stuff. But like the baby formula situation is crazy.
Listen, it's sad times, and
All
but
right,
I
let me get out of here. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sad times, guys, and I hate to say it, but Richard Wolff warned us about this. He told us this was
Yeah.
coming. In fact, if you go back and you watch my interview with Richard Wolff from last year, you have to go back quite a ways. Richard Wolff warned that this was coming, and here we are. So, thank you so much for calling, Johnny. I'm gonna go ahead to the next.
Let me get out of here. I'm taking up your time. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All righty. Okay, who do we have up next? We have Sean. You're on the mic.
Hey, Sabby, thanks for having me. Appreciate you hosting this call-in in this forum.
Thanks so much for calling in. What are your thoughts on this, Sean?
So the Ukraine lobby and the Ukraine PAC has surpassed Israel recently, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone with all the billions of dollars that's been funneled in to that country. So, I mean, this is how Washington works. You know, it's a money laundering scheme. Do you remember when I called like maybe a week or two ago and talked to you about that political organization that I came up with?
Yes, I think you're breaking up just a little bit, Sean.
Well, guess who got in contact with Case Study QB?
You're breaking up. I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay.
Maybe try. Are you using Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Okay, you're better now.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah, so I just have been, you guys at RBN have really kind of like energized me and gotten me inspired to sort of like get out there and make connections. And I think we're kind of looking towards like intellectuals like Brianna Joy Gray, who's great and she's got a lot to offer. But these are also some of the most institutionalized people who followed all the rules, got good grades, and a lot of they're not really like that creative of thinkers usually. I think people like Rome and people like you guys at RBN who are legitimate working class people.
Oh, like, Sean, I'm so sorry, Sean. You're breaking up.
Okay.
Okay, you're fine now.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, some of these academics that we're looking to, I mean, these are people who didn't really resist their institutionalization in public school, got good marks, did everything they were supposed to do. And it's not that these people don't have any value. They're just not, they're not revolutionaries. They're not wired that way. And like I was saying, like people like Rome, like people who are out there like, no, like we don't need these politicians. Like that's where we need to go. We need to start building networks with people like Rome, with independent media. We need to start using technology, like I was saying. Like we got to start thinking outside the box and connecting with each other. And that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. And like I said, like just got in contact with Case Study QB, and we have some real similar ideas. And we're going to make this happen. I was talking to Nick about going out to Nick and Zoya like earlier this week about going to lobbyist houses. If anyone wants to do that, I'm Bruce Wayne 10 on Twitter. I want to make that happen. I'm dead serious about that. But yeah, I mean this politics game is rigged, and until we start getting like independent voters and non-voters and bring up that voter turnout, and getting out in the streets. Like, we can't just be looking at this like in a traditional way, like we were brought up to, watching television. And it's like, this is a TV show.
Oh,
You know
I'm
what I
sorry.
mean? Like,
I'm sorry, Sean. You're breaking up. Do you want to try to call back?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
That's cool.
All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next caller, and that is No War.
Hey, Sabby. Good evening. What IPA you having this evening?
I don't have one tonight because I have to get up very early tomorrow. I have a birthday event to go to.
Fair enough. Your birthday or somebody else?
Someone else's birthday.
All right. Hey, so the last guy was discussing, and I think you're going to bring him back up, so that's why I feel comfortable saying this. He will get a chance to respond to this, but discussing Breonna Joy Gray. Breonna Joy Gray is, like, to my eyes, one of the best advocates, that we have that has a platform. She's right in the same vein as you and RBN and I, like, okay, she went to Harvard for undergrad and graduate school. I don't care. She is on the right side of every issue. She does not she herd people into the Democratic Party and voting for them. She is proudly, certainly in 2016 and certainly alluded to in 2020, that she voted green. She didn't vote for Joe Biden. She didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. Like, to diminish her and her credentials because her bona fides because of where she went to school and that she got good marks is really, like, wrong to my mind. I can't get on that ship. I can't get on board with that. 2 callers ago was talking about the squad isn't bought, and I'm sorry to this individual who may not get a chance to respond, but the squad is bought. AOC goes out and gives, I think her speech rate's like $80,000 or $100,000 a speech. That's bought. Period. End of story. Bought. She is bought off. And to protect the squad and say that they're not corrupt or they're not corrupted at this point is so wrong. They just voted for $40 billion for Ukraine funding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you feel that way and that you want to protect those folks. They aren't protecting you. So I don't know why you feel loyalty to them. I'm sorry that you feel that way. But the honest reality is...
The one thing I want to add...
Go ahead.
One thing I want to add about the speaking fees as well. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this, but after 5 years, all of them are eligible for speaking fees and engagements and book deals. And I don't know if everyone realizes that, but they'll all get that point. They'll all get there some point if they stay in at least for the 5 years. So that's also important for people to know. Like I said, like, they'll be fine. Like, they stay in that time, and then decide, hey, I'm done. I'm not going to run again. Like, they'll be fine.
Totally. 100% right. And so, just to say they're not corrupted, somebody paid for AOC's ticket to go to the Met Gala last year. Somebody paid for that dress.
Right.
Somebody paid for that. She's bought off. Period. That is corruption through and through, like, to a T, textbook definition corruption. I'm sorry that, like, I bought into AOC at first. I was impressed when, between the time she got elected and the time she was inaugurated, she went with Sunrise Movement to Nancy Pelosi's office and protested and occupied Nancy Pelosi's office. she wouldn't do that anymore. That's a form
No.
of corruption. She has been corrupted by the system. That period, end of story. She has been corrupted by the system. She would never do that anymore. She would not go occupy Nancy Pelosi's office. Period. Like, if you think that, you're entitled to think that. You're entitled to think whatever you want. I'm not the thought police, but in your heart, you know she would not. And I'm not speaking to you, Sabby. I'm speaking to anybody that thinks this. She would not go do what she did in that interim period between her election and her inauguration. So, and then just one other thing that I heard, it's really unfortunate that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker are right on the Ukraine stuff and on the baby formula stuff. But I'm not somebody who's going to decline alliances where people are right on issues. I will align with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker on places where they're right, and places where they're bigoted and racist and completely wrong. I will fight them. But on places where they're right, I will ally with them. And I think that's important. That's part of the class warfare in this country, that we need to find the allies on the issues where we can align with people, and fight people on the issues where we don't align. And it's just really sad that the squad isn't aligned with us on Ukraine funding or on figuring out the baby formula issue. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is. She's a deplorable person in a lot of respects. But I'm not going to decline an ally on things where we agree. I'm not going to decline an ally when somebody is right on something, period. And I think that's such an important thing in the fights that we need to engage in and that we need to win.
That's a good point.
So we have to win on these things, and we can't let babies die because we can't feed them formula. We need to figure out something to do to address that issue. And if Marjorie Taylor Greene is an ally on that issue, then we need to ally with her on that. And we will fight her on the racist and bigoted and stupid shit that she says, because she's wrong on a lot of things. She's wrong on the majority of things she says. But on that, I think it's essential that we align and ally with the people that, when they're right. And that was the whole thing with Trump for 4 years. You could, if Trump had said that he wanted to do a $30 minimum wage, liberals like Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi would have been against it, just because Trump said it. And I'm not willing to run down that road. I want to align and work with people when they're right on issues. And if when Trump was right, he was right. And when Trump was wrong, he was wrong. And I just hate people that will marginalize people just because they have an R next to their name, or because they're bigoted on a lot of issues and wrong on a lot of issues. If they're right, they're right, and we work with them on those issues, and we fight them on everything else. Bottom line, I think that's a big story that we need to work on. So,
well said. No war. That's a really good point. I do want to comment really quick about the academic point that you made. I think that people need to realize that a lot of us in this space do have a lot of education. I don't know why people look at Harvard as though it's like this beacon. I've worked at a lot of these universities here in the Boston area in Massachusetts. Harvard is not as much different from some of the other schools here, believe it or not. Yes, they do have a lot of money. They do have a lot of funding. But I have friends that went to Harvard. I have friends that went to BU. I went to Northeastern here. A lot of these schools are somewhat similar. It's just that it's maybe more difficult to get into Harvard than some of those other schools. But I hear what you're saying about the academics. I think the point that Sean was trying to make is that I think some people are wanting to hear from people who are a part of the working class. So like some people want to hear from like Rome. They want to hear from someone who's there on the ground, who's giving people, you know, food and clothes and things like that. I think that was the point Sean was trying to make. But I mean, even
I
for
love
me,
hearing from Rome.
yeah, I know Rome's like awesome. I know, like even for me, like when it comes to like the academics, I mean, I did really well in school. Like I have a master's degree. Like I mean, I'm not that much different from Bree, except for the fact that yes, like I have been poor.
Totally.
So I think that is the difference. But I grew up middle class, and I went to not acting. I went to international school as well. I went to school abroad. So we're not that different. I think the only difference is the class aspect, which is I know what it's like to have money and to lose money, and then to try to get back where you were before again. So I think that's the difference. But I hear where you're coming from. I do want to go ahead and grab the next caller.
Thanks for your time, Sabby. I love you and appreciate your work, and you're right on the thing you just said. I agree with you 100%. So thank you for your time this evening. Happy Friday. Take care.
Happy Friday to you too. Thanks so much. All right, Eric, you are the next caller.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
So, when I first heard about this story about the $40 billion being approved to Ukraine, just imagine my disgust as a teacher. Just look, especially at the school I work at now. Granted, I'm teaching in the community I grew up in, so we're in a predominantly black neighborhood. The school I'm at is. So you know that this particular school is not being funded as well as others. And I'm like, hold on, you got $40 billion just to give like this? But yet, I don't know, you can't keep teachers around. You can't help schools around the country because we got teachers still quitting en masse still.
Yep.
And it's embarrassing. It's like y'all really don't want to. At this point, it's like you might as well just poke a middle finger at every single one of us. And especially in my subject area, like I teach math, so good God, you can't find too many of us to teach this anymore.
Mm-mm. No, we were just talking about that on RBN Roundtable yesterday about the number of teachers that are quitting right now, and that are not just quitting their school, but leaving the profession altogether. Because, and honestly, I don't blame them. I worked in education for over 10 years, and I'm telling you guys, it's not worth it. Like what you have to put up with, what you have to deal with, and what you're paid, it's not worth it. You're not just a teacher. You're not just an academic advisor. They also want you to be a babysitter. They want you to be a counselor. If something goes wrong with a student, the first person that they're looking at is you. And then you're reaching out to the parents or the roommate to see if they have some input, to see if they can help. And a lot of times they're nowhere to be found. So it's just, there's so much pressure that's put on you nowadays. Like as a teacher, it's nothing like what it was like when I was a kid and when I was in school. They're requiring these teachers to have so much more credentials now. You have to constantly keep going back and get another certification for this and for that. And then the school doesn't pay for it. You have to pay for it. It's a very thankless profession, and it's just underappreciated. It's sad, but it's a reality. I think, the pandemic really woke up a lot of people in that profession as well. Just like, no, I'm not going to put up with this. They had teachers here in Massachusetts. They made them go into the classroom to teach, and the students were all staying at home learning remotely. So they had teachers standing in the classroom teaching to an empty classroom. Now tell me how that makes sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And they had us do something similar down here too. except like you had classes that were half the sizes that they normally would be, and it's like, especially in my case, like my school's an alternative school, so usually if students get in trouble, they come to where I'm at. And there's not that many of them on campus to begin with, so most of the time when some of us are showing up, we're getting like maybe 3 students in a class. Especially last school year where everybody was masked up, and we actually had common sense, and it's like every class was like 3. I'm like, okay, cool, I love this. Personally, I like it because guess what? It's not too many of you, and I can help you all more individually. Richard Wolff talked about this in his book, The Sickness is the System. In schooling, in public school, you all should have gone to a tutor-based model. And I'm just like, God damn it. If only more people would listen to you, Professor Wolff. If only more people.
I'm telling you, if you go back and watch, so funny thing, I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys ever, but now for whatever reason, every time I watch a YouTube video and I let it autoplay, the next video that plays after that is Richard Wolff. And it's usually one of the videos where he's giving like a lecture at the new school. And so I'm just like, this is automatic now, like Richard Wolff. So I've seen a lot of Richard Wolff videos. He's been on the show and he was right. Like he tried to tell people this is coming and here we are.
Yeah. Unfortunate. And then, imagine explaining some of this to my high school students who, like I said, a lot of my students grew up in the community just like I did. So imagine seeing this, and then you go on, hold up, and then you got the baby formula shit on top of this.
Yep.
And one student's like, well, what the fuck? I mean, like, and I try to tell some of my high schoolers, like, y'all have no idea how bad this really is, what y'all about to walk into. Especially my seniors graduating. You about to walk into some bullshit.
Yes.
I'm just here to warn you. I mean, hell, I'm like, let's keep it real. Some of your teachers have student loan debt up to their damn eyeballs.
Yes.
And they go, well, shit, I'm never paying this shit. God damn it. I need to rethink my life decisions. Shit.
Yes, I hear you. Well, Eric, thank you so much for calling in. I want to get to the next caller, but well said.
No problem. Thanks again.
All righty. All right. The next caller is Frank. You just have to unmute.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. By the way, I've really come to appreciate your dedication and your passion and your clarity, especially that last one. I wanted to kind of react to the topic tonight. When the squad, amongst all the other Democrats, voted in favor of the $40 billion, I was once again saddened, but not surprised. And what the squad and the added members of that group kind of, I think, failed to realize is that this was another of many teaching moments so that they could have used the $40 billion to teach a lot of things to their constituents in their district as well as nationally. The fact that these expenditures are made or proposals without any view towards budget. They're not made in a conventional financing. They're really made in an MMT, or modern monetary theory, which basically says you're a sovereign country, you can print all the money you want, so you don't have to worry about paying it back, at least immediately. Whereas when they look at something like universal health care, Medicare for all, they're always asking, how are you going to pay for that? How are you going to develop, and who are you going to tax? So a teaching moment with regard to conventional financing and modern monetary theory would have been fantastic. A teaching moment with regard to the current size of our military and defense budget, which dwarfs every other country, including the ones that we say that we are afraid of, but is ever growing. The incestuousness of the defense industry lobbyists, past senators and congresspeople and others within our government in terms of the executive branch and other branches, and why that continues to take place. The fact that the military kind of knows that if you don't use it, and the defense contractors, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you don't have a compelling reason for using the military, which is either real, imagined, or fabricated, you may lose your argument in terms of increasing the budget. Right now, there's a lot of talk and a lot of momentum and so on and so on, and it's been there for years, but it's increasing in terms of China being our next adversary beyond Russia. So if it's not one thing, it's another. It could be Taiwan, and it's endless. What the squad could have done is say, this is another teaching moment. I represent the district with tremendous needs, and I'm going to explain to the citizens in my district, and hopefully beyond, why I'm not going to give in so easily, or maybe not at all, to another bill in front of me or another decision to increase the defense budget. Again, because the more that we increase it, the more bases that we have around the world, the more we don't tackle the defense industry in terms of its incestuousness with both parties, and the revolving door, we're just looking at, if it's not this time with Ukraine, and if somehow this gets resolved without a tremendous escalation, it'll be the next one. We've been at war in one way or the other, small countries, medium-sized countries, and large, for 40 years. Meanwhile, China has been using that 40 years to reduce poverty, to create an incredible infrastructure, to develop relationships within Africa and South America and the rest of the world. It's interesting, one last point in terms of a teaching moment, that there are two sectors in our economy that have always kind of led over a 10-year period, and actually even less than that, if you look at 3, 5, 10-year periods, towards stock price growth. That's anything in the defense industry, and guess what? Anything in the healthcare industry. So if somebody invested in individual stocks, whatever, in terms of those two industries, the chances of them losing money were small. The chances of them making a lot of money were quite good. So the sadness here for me is for AOC, for all of them to not realize that their power has to come from their district. If I was in their shoes, I'd be going around to, I don't know how many community-based organizations, churches, nonprofits, any place where I could get a venue and say, these are the reasons why I cannot vote for this. I may be in a small number of people, but these are the reasons. And I think that will develop actually more power for them. They're busy currying favor, going along in order to, with the hope, the dream of Nancy Pelosi or James Clyburn or Steny Hoyer or whoever else supporting something that they champion. It's not going to happen. That time period already left, unless they take stands and accrue power basically from their base, making them basically, just they're going to be able to win elections every single time, but educating their citizens within their district. Anyway, thanks. I talked beyond my time. Thanks a million.
Awesome, Frank. A quick question. Are they still talking to
Yeah.
people in their district? Because I've spoken to people that live in AOC's district and they're saying that they don't hear from her.
Well, I thought about, I didn't want to concentrate on AOC because I think, my opinion, by the way, is that the use of the term squad should have been squashed. They set themselves apart. They set themselves as targets. People that may be aligned with them, who may be very progressive, may not want to be the 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th member of that, because it actually, to my mind, and I've worked for two mayors and a governor at high levels, and I've dealt with all kinds of elected officials at every level. I know what happens. They, in the state of New York, if you're an incoming assembly person and you didn't kiss Sheldon Silver's ring, you weren't going to get very far. They ice you unless you develop the base in your district to make you formidable, to make you somebody that they're not going to so easily discard or send away. And they kind of have lost their vision. They've lost their sense of power, not only their own empowerment, maintenance, and growth, but also the empowerment of their citizens by making all of these things a teaching moment and having a lot of fun doing it. I mean, they wanted to have people contribute to a community center, a senior citizen center, and invite everybody around to hear, why am I not going to vote for this? These are the reasons why. For the coffee, donuts, and whatever the heck else they want to deliver and serve, I'd give them the 100, 150. It's better spent, to tell you the truth. To your point, by the way, it's a district that I know well. Mm-hmm. I do have lots of friends in the district. I was supportive of somebody that was running for city council, and she's made it, but in another. And yes, didn't want to get into that because I usually like to verify things and not necessarily, even though these are close friends, not necessarily, buy it unless I kind of know it. But yes, I have heard that, and I've heard that for a couple of years now.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for your call, Frank. I want to go ahead to the next caller.
Thank you.
All right, Lance, I'm going to make you next caller, but I do want to give a shout out really quick to Faux Q. Thank you so much for just becoming a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to Faux Q. All right, Lance, what's your take on all of this? 40 billion gone or on its way out.
Yeah. Crazy. Always great to talk to you. Let me echo what Frank said. You're just literally the best, I mean, just the insightfulness and the movement orientation and not just being a pundit. I mean, you're just great. You're just awesome. So, and RBN too, everybody on that, it's just fantastic. Yeah, the 40 billion. What I was thinking a while back, I'm a bipartisan critic. There were some right-wingers out in west somewhere who said that, stop the steal. It's a joke. I don't know if this was direct or whether it was someone in the GOP caucus that said this, that I'm afraid to vote against Trump and stop the steal, even though it's idiocy and lunacy, because there's threats against my family back home. Okay? That if you don't back Trump, we're going to come after your family. Now you got AOC, a tough girl from the Bronx, boy. She's New York City tough, right? And those shoes are at the Smithsonian, and she's a tough girl. And yet, on January 6th, she was protected from Jump Street, right? What more does one need to know about her character? That she pretended to be in danger. Now, if she was some ultra protected, even then, if she was just someone who had been protected in upper middle class, 1% world her whole life, that any threat would be, but it wasn't even any threat. She was in a safe building. It had already been secured. She knew she was in zero danger and pretended she was. All right. And yet now those people get to make decisions. It's one step short of sending our own troops there. Yeah, send 40 billion. Yeah, javelins. Let them destroy, Russians, and let the, maybe some will get in where Ukrainians will be killed. Yeah, but too bad. But boy, oh boy, I'm so afraid. I can't go to the union meeting gathering because, security. I'm under threat. It's like, these people are making war, life and death decision. What, baby formula? Yeah, that's a problem. But boy, I'm so threatened though. We'd love to do something, but Jesus, I'm so fragile. It's like, it just sickens me almost literally to think that these people are making life and death decisions when they're just like afraid of like, well, how could you possibly go into politics and say, well, I'll go into politics as long as I'm not attacked for my actions. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like saying, I want to be a swimmer as long as I don't get wet. Yeah, I'd like to be a swimmer, but all that water, makes me cold. It's like, how could you possibly go into politics and say that, oh, no, but, I'm under threat and people on Twitter don't like me. And so I'd love to make a vote. The vote that she was crying on the House floor because she couldn't decide whether she wanted the vote to be 431 to 4 or 430 to 5. I mean, but go ahead and 40 billion for Ukraine. Yeah, send those javelins in there. Send those rockets in. By the way, just to make another point, there was a book called Plain Speaking by Merle Miller, set records on New York Times about the sober, straight thinking. It was called Plain Speaking. It was about Harry S. Truman. Good old boy, right? Sane and sober. That's the guy who dropped 2 atomic bombs. So the idea that, well, we can't have that'll never happen again. This is Mr. Sober and Sane who dropped 2 atomic bombs. We've already had a nuclear war, folks. So this idea that it's completely out of our imagination, how can you be that stupid? We've already had a nuclear war. He's already said he's willing to use limited nukes. And it just baffles me that they're going that fast, that hard, provoking Ukraine, provoking China with Taiwan. It's like they want Armageddon. I thought they wanted to step things up, but I don't know if they want direct war on 2 fronts, like Germany and Japan. Only it's going to be, Russia and China. It's insane.
Honestly, I think there's a group of people who truly believe that out of chaos, we will have peace. That they believe that in order to achieve peace, that we have to have destruction and chaos, and peace will come from that. Now, I don't agree with that, but I really do think there's a group of people that they believe that. They believe it's necessary to go to these battles in order for us to have peace.
But they used to be, right. Used to be the AIPAC weirdos, not just AIPAC, but the Christian Jewish cult, the people that want the rapture. Bring it on, yeah. Armageddon. But I thought it was just like the fringiest fringe, but, that were important people in terms of the fact that they're part of AIPAC, part of the Christian right and all that. But now it's like the brainworm has just gone completely through the whole works right on the heels of Afghanistan. How could we be that stupid to think that this is a good war? I'm really perplexed by it. And it's completely lockstep on the left. It's only on the right that you're getting any pushback. What do you make of that, Sabby? I don't get it.
It's propaganda. It's really propaganda. And let's be real. I do want to be fair here and mention that the reason why we're getting that pushback on the right is because right now it's Democrats that are in power. If it was the right that was in power, Republicans that were in power, like, for example, if Trump was in office right now, would Marjorie Taylor Greene push back on Donald Trump? I don't think so.
I think they might. I don't know about MTG. She's just a whack job. Rand Paul's one of the, Rand Paul's a classic libertarian because when I disagree with him, he's the most wackiest whack job ever, like MTG territory. But when I agree with him, he's better than the Democrats on certain things. He actually did his own personal filibuster unofficially. It wasn't like just hold up a particular on what do you call it? Incarceration. So I think on some of these things, being the libertarian, I think that Rand Paul might. I don't know if he would hold up the vote, but I think he would come out against it or vote against the 40 billion. I think he would be consistent on that particular thing. But like a stop clock is, right twice a day. So, I mean, I don't want to give the guy too much credit, but he's been great with Fauci. That's sincere. Yes, of course he wants to. And then immediately after the hearing, hey, give me some money because I just, torched Fauci. So, yes, of course he's a politician and he's corrupt and all the rest of it. But he's sincere about the fact that, what he's saying about Fauci. I think he's sincere about what he's saying about the war. But it's just, I know the propaganda's been there since World War One. You know what I mean, Sabby? It's like what I was saying on Bree's show. I was talking to Matt Stoller, and he's talking about how China's, you have more important things to do. But it was a pretty good back and forth. I don't know, Matt. And Bree's like, it was going to be brief, and it wound up being 10 extra minutes because Matt extended it. But the idea that that a late stage capitalist country like us wants to provoke China and do this with Russia, and the idea that what it doesn't, with all the propaganda that's been there, here's what I was saying, is that we had some diplomacy here and there. And, and Nixon, opened up to China, recognized China, and he played off China because it was a Cold War. So we had America playing off China against Russia. Now we're pushing them together. And it's like, what is going on with that? Just in terms of sheer diplomacy, there used to be a little diplomacy in between the warmongering and the military industrial complex. Now it's like all military industrial complex, all war, all. Steny Hoyer said it. We are at war. So we're, it's like we're there. And I don't. And who, deep down in the Pentagon, this has been talked about too, is that can we even win a war? We know we're not that equipped. Look what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq, 2 third world countries that we couldn't defeat ultimately, squelch them permanently. So I don't know what the government is thinking. How are we going to win a war if we're escalating this stuff up? Unless, like you say, it's just like, let the shit hit the fan and we'll just go for Armageddon, I guess. I don't know.
Well, Lance, thanks so much for calling in. I'm going to get to the next caller.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, guys. You too. All right, guys, I'm going to take 3 more callers and then Sabby has to wrap it up because it's getting close to that 11:30 mark. I'm going to grab Owen. You are the next caller.
Sure thing. How are you tonight, Sabby?
Hello, how are you?
Doing well. In relation to the question, or I guess your subject today, just about another one of the squad's failures, I don't want to waste time just like complaining about them because everybody already knows that the squad's a done deal. But what I wanted to ask you about was solutions instead. So I've just been talking to a bunch of people in my community about like mutual aid, and it seems that in my opinion, since the wider Black community equates like economic assistance to pity in some way, I just wanted to ask you, how do we as leftists or people trying to explain to our communities how mutual aid can be used as a weapon against capital, as well as providing for people's material needs? How do we try to convince or reacquaint people with like mutual aid in a modern society filled with like Black capitalists? Because I believe that is a major problem when it comes to that.
I think you should educate them about the Black Panthers and what the Black Panthers did in reference to mutual aid and the idea that they had. Now, there's a whole history of this, and not everyone's going to want to sit down and listen to it. I'll just be honest with you. Some people are just going to be like, I don't have time for all of that. But to cut the story short and just get straight to the chase, one thing that was really great about the Black Panthers is that they realized early on that the government was not going to save them. The government was not going to help their community. So they decided to help their community themselves. And the Black Panthers were international. I don't know if everyone realizes that, but there were Black Panthers even in South Korea. So it wasn't just in the United States, right? So what they did is that they didn't just do mutual aid. They made sure that they created a community that was caring for each other and the people in that community. So that way it didn't it didn't look to people as though they're just giving out food and clothes. They were actually getting to know people in their community. If that meant that so-and-so needed someone to walk them home from work because they got off late at night, they had people who could do that. They had people who protected each other in the community. They did the free breakfast program, which is actually where public schools got that from the United States. They got that idea from the Black Panther Party. So they were able to get to know the people in the community. So it felt more like a community feel. So it didn't feel like you were just going into a community and just giving out free things. Then it has more like that charity feel, but it felt more like this is a group that is taking care of people in their community. And I think that's the way to go about it. But you definitely want to educate them about the Black Panthers, because a lot of people in this country think the Black Panthers was just like some militant organization. That's actually not true. They read a lot, especially in reference to, literature about socialism and how to fight back and how to be a community. So they had those kind of sessions as well. They were very educational, not just about giving out food. So I think you have to educate them about the history of mutual aid through the Black Panther Party in this country, why it was done, how it was done, and how it was effective. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is honestly through YouTube. There are videos on YouTube of the Black Panther Party showing them doing mutual aid, showing them helping the community, because not everyone's going to have time to sit down at a workshop and listen to this whole story, right? Because it goes deeper than what I just told you. But you can show them video clips so they can see exactly what the Black Panther Party did and how it benefited the community. The fact that they were building clinics, because again, just drive it back to the notion that they realized early on that the United States government was not going to help them. So that's why they decided to help their communities themselves. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Thank you, Sabby. And just so the audience knows, I only asked specifically about the Black community because when it comes to white leftists, since I've been dealing with them in the DSA, they'd rather run a political campaign for a person who's in the DSA rather than actually provide for people's material needs, which could actually convince somebody of your ideology. So thank you, Sabby, and have a nice rest of your night.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for calling in. All right, I am going to go to Eric. Since I got you already, I'm going to go to the next caller, which is Frank. This is a different Frank. All right, Frank, you are on the mic. Just have to hit unmute. Not sure if you
better.
All right, I got you.
Okay.
Hello.
There's a couple of issues that I've been trying to get out to the community at large and that aren't talked about very much. One is insulation of buildings. I am an architect and a contractor. I know what's going on, and I have what building codes do not deal with existing buildings insulation at all. And so you can go to your Whole Foods, and I guarantee it is not insulated. You can go to your school, I guarantee it's not insulated. The word insulation was not put into the any of the building codes until 2006. Our houses are a separate code, and how codes work is that there's a code corporation that has 3 offices in the country, and it's called the International Building Council, International Code Council, and it writes the International Building Code, which is for government and commercial buildings, and then there's another one for International Residential Code. They're 2 separate things, so the codes don't deal with existing buildings, and the R values of new buildings, new construction for government and corporations, are 1/2 the value of houses. So we're insulating the little boxes, but the big boxes we're just allowing to be heated and cooled to it, whatever needs. There's really not much stopping it. So I've gone to this local Safeway and had a conversation with the manager, but I need to go up the ladder there. And the Whole Foods actually is, they sent the regional sustainable manager here in Denver, and he gave me a bunch of lies to go try and get me off track. And like, I'm not buying it. But we have a major problem. That's at least 15%. If we insulated buildings, we could bring down greenhouse gases by 15%. The plan that is in place right now is to just do treadmill, put ourselves in a treadmill and keep the greenhouse gases at the same level, and just insulate the new construction while the existing buildings go just continue to be heating and cooling hogs. I don't know how to get that out to the bigger community so that we can take action on that. I'm sort of on my own here in Denver doing that. And also the other issue I have quite a bit of expertise on is the corruption, racism, and misogyny in professional licensing. But I could go on for hours on how bad that is. It is the core of capitalism, and we really have to take that down in order to have that get rid of capitalism and the racism and misogyny. It's licensing allows who can be a capitalist or not, and we can't have that as a club anymore. We have some licenses that are less than 1%. After you earn the degree. So talk about that for hours, and I know you got to go. So, okay.
Oh, okay, thanks. Thank you so much for that information, Frank. I was not aware of that. So definitely you just educated me as well.
Yeah. What's the next steps that you think I could take to try and get that information out on, so people will take action, like teachers could go to their schools and say, can you insulate my building, please? Go to your grocery stores and say, can you insulate I don't like paying for these prices anymore. Part of it's the inflation of that. So any ideas what can be done?
You can always go to the press, but when you go to them, there's always the risk that they may not air it, or they may take just little sound bites of what you said and not the whole story. So there's that avenue. Or you can just do, which is what like a lot of us do. Like the reason why I do my show is to educate people. So you could just have your own platform on YouTube, or Rumble, wherever you want to be these days, and do that. And Eric just mentioned to me in the chat also, city council meetings is another place that you can go. And those happen more often than people realize. I wish more people would attend city council meetings. Most of the time when I've gone, it's like me and not many other people, unless it was a very pressing issue. So city council meetings would be good for you to educate people about that. And they do Q&A sessions at those meetings. So you can talk to them about that as well. But also you use the social media, use the platforms, the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you can to get that message out, because I did not realize that until you said that tonight.
Yeah, I'm Colorado People's News on Twitter, so I do put that out quite a bit, and I have gone to city councils. I have a city councilor in a nearby suburb that I've asked for documents and proof of our values of the Lakewood, Colorado buildings, and she has as a city councilor as well, and they still won't give in to either of us. So this is very much locked in throughout the Democratic Party, and the media actually knows about it as well. And the professional licensing, the media is very in tuned into that, and they are not going to say a word. That is the base of the Democratic Party. and they're not going to give that ghost up. Okay, thank you.
Good points. Thank you so much for calling in, Frank. All right, guys. So I did just realize this is a different Eric. So I am so sorry, Eric. Eric B, you are now the next caller.
Hey, Sabby, how you doing?
Hello.
Hey, yeah, that was another Eric. This is the real one. So, what I wanted to share with you was that because all these things are happening, but the mainstream media is so powerful with their propaganda. And what I do is I like to probe people that are not like us, that are immersed in what I call the leftist ecosystem. They're buying into this. I went to a place with my wife last weekend in the Bay Area. That's pretty, I want to say, pretty democratic, pretty free-thinking area here in the Bay Area. And they had this, but they're also very wealthy. And they had a big flag, a Ukraine flag flying. I mean, for them to just even have a flagpole shows you how much money they do have. At this, it was like, and everybody gets to the place that they get to in different ways. I'm not saying that these people are affluent just because maybe they work their asses off to get to where they are, and that's how they got there. But here goes the point. Good people are easily influenced by the mainstream media propaganda. And we are such a small portion that makes up the population that the masses of people are converted into the mainstream media's message, that it's hard to even argue with regular people because they've consumed the fact that going to Ukraine is the right thing to do, that we're fighting an uphill battle. And we're not going to win it with the likes of AOC or the Squad. They have proven over and over the past 2 years who they are. They're not going to go to bat for us. Whatever they do is going to be crumbs, and they're going to be virtual signaling to do things that are not really going to be anything quantifiable, that I like to use that word. So we have to go back to what RBN has been messaging us for the past year, however long, a little bit over a year that you guys have been around, which is direct action. And the history has proven that that's the only way that things are going to change. Nothing else, not the politicians. If we get more Shamas or wants and more people like that, that's definitely going to help us. But how long would that take? If we're being honest, realistic, how many years will it take for us to get more people like her on board? Unless some sort of real breakthrough happens, it's not going to happen, because the mainstream media insulates the American public as to what's truly happening, the way they got rid of RT, the way they silence any of the opposition messaging, right? So the only way that we can break through is through direct action. And that means conjuring up all the people that we can to really bring the messages out to the street. Kind of like what Black Lives Matter did with George Floyd, but they didn't have any goals. They didn't have. I mean, they had some goals, but there was nothing that they were going to quantify. They couldn't really channel what they wanted in the way that maybe would have been more productive. And so, my takeaway of this is we have to focus on the direct action. And everybody that listens to your show, we need to focus on what each one of us can do. For some of us, that could be donating money. For others, it could be going out and protesting and just supporting that. And we have to collectively make some goals for the coming year, the coming quarters, so that we can make these changes. Otherwise, it will not happen because everything I just said.
No, that's 100%. The other thing I think that's important to note too is when you bring up direct action. Thank you so much for saying that everyone will have like a different role. This is something that Rome has tried to explain to people multiple times. Not everyone is supposed to be out in the street. I just want to make that very clear. Not everyone physically can do that. Some people just don't have the means to do it, right? But there are other things that you can do. For some people, it may be donating money. Some people, they have the money. That's where they come in, right? So they may be donating money to help those direct action events. For some people, you could help with marketing. You could help with promotion. That doesn't really require you to go out in the streets per se. You could do a lot of that over social media. For other people, it may just be like just trying to combat smears and negative attention, because you are going to get negative press. So for some people, your job could be PR. You'll come in and be the PR people and kill the noise when it comes through, and there will be noise that will come through. So not everyone is supposed to be out in the streets. So when people make the argument that, well, I'm not a fighter, I'm not an activist, I don't go out in the streets and protest, that's not my role. No one's saying that you have to physically be out in the street doing that, but there are other ways that you can help. For other people, it could be lending an ear to your audience to let them know, hey, this direct action is coming up. These are the demands. I encourage all of you to go out there to DC and get involved. You know, we had these marches for Medicare for All last year in this country, and most of the big platforms and independent media didn't even mention it. And they all knew about it. All of them were contacted. So sometimes it's something just as small as that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be physically outside with everybody else. But I think it's going to take like all of us, right? So I just want to issue like a news flash for everybody here. Obviously, the left is divided. You have some people who still want to continue to do the inside strategy. You have some people who don't want to do the inside strategy anymore. And they're like, nope, I'm not voting for him if they run through the Democratic Party. Here's the problem. For the people who are relying on doing it the electoral way, if you don't have the rest, that other half of the left on board, those candidates are going to have a difficult time winning because the left is very small in this country. We are a small echo chamber. Most people I talk to, they don't even know these independent media networks. They don't even know what a TYT is. They've never heard of it. Most people are only watching mainstream media. Now, when it comes to direct action, the difference is, do you have to just get people on the left to come out and fight for healthcare? No, you can get people to come out and fight for healthcare that have no political ideology whatsoever, but they need healthcare. That's the difference. And that's what I want people to understand. With you look back at like the civil rights movement, that was not done through electoral politics. Did they go to different Black people and say, are you religious? Are you not religious? Okay, let's just gather all the Black people that are religious and let's fight for civil rights. No, that would have made the group so much smaller. So I think you have to think outside the box. You're going to have to include people that you may not necessarily agree with on everything. And so even when we talk about those types of movements, you have to remember that there were also white people that were part of the civil rights movement too. So you need some of everybody. So I think that, thank you so much for saying that, because I know some people say, they're like, dude, I'm not a fighter. That's not my thing. Okay, cool. Can you do marketing? Can you do promotion? Can you do PR?
I have one question for you, Sabby, that I've been asking you, but I know you get a lot of chats and whatnot. But I wanted to ask you, because Franco from Frank Analysis, he talked about this, and a few other guys did too, but Franco was the one, and he's getting really shadow banned on YouTube. And, you know, I really like Franco, by the way. I really think he's one of the up and coming guys. But he was, you know, basically asking, in a sense, was it the right strategy for Chris Smalls to have gone up to Capitol Hill, taking the pictures with Joe Biden, taking the pictures with Bernie and AOC? Was that the right strategy? Is having them actually detrimental to what he was trying to do? And really, you know, sort of making it seem like things are going to be okay when they're really not. They're far from being okay. But because he did that, it may have given people the relief to say, oh, well, I guess we're going down the right path, when we're clearly, you and I know, and the audience knows we're not. What do you think about that? And that was my last question. Thank you.
Yeah, so I struggled with this one. I get both sides. I do understand that sometimes the Democratic Party, they co-opt movements, and I totally get it. So I know some people were concerned about that. I also understand Chris's side where he's trying to reach as many people as possible. And I understand as well, as many times as I tell people we need to hold politicians accountable and we need to put pressure on them. Well, Chris Smalls going to that Senate hearing and saying what he said to Lindsey Graham, that's him putting pressure on Lindsey Graham and telling him, like, look, this is not a left-right issue. So I love that he said that and said that this is about the workers. You know, this is one of those situations where it's like, if you do, you're damned. If you don't, you're damned. Because if he would have turned it down, then people would have said, how dare you not take up that opportunity? And so he decided to do it. And then you have people saying, how dare you go to the White House? So it would have been either way. And I want to tell people, just because Chris Smalls took a picture with Joe Biden, that doesn't mean he agrees with Joe Biden, like, you know, politically. I do think Joe Biden obviously is lying as usual, like he's always done. But he gave more money to Amazon even after taking that photo op that he did. That's his job as a politician. That's what they do. They take photo ops, and then behind the scenes, they continue to do dirty work. But Chris Smalls, the activist, as an activist, you have to think about, how can I get the message to as many people as possible? Same thing when he went on Tucker Carlson's show. How many people watch Tucker Carlson's show? Over 5 million people. So he's looking at it from the mindset of as an activist, not so much, oh, is this a Democrat thing or a Republican thing? So I think that's the difference. I don't even know if I would consider it a strategy per se. I just think he was invited there and he said, well, yes, I'm going to take this opportunity to tell these politicians, this is not a left-right issue. This is a working class issue, and working class people are not being protected in this country, and they're not being given the rights that they should have. So I think Chris did the right thing, in my opinion, but I mean, I understand it. But if you continue to avoid politicians altogether, then how are you going to put pressure on them? You know, so for example,
great points, Sabby.
Yeah, so like Eric and I this morning, that's what we were doing. We were in Boston for Mayor Michelle Wu. She had an event in Jamaica Plain, and it was called Coffee and Conversation. And I made sure that we got the people that needed to speak to her about their housing facility being privatized by Boston Housing Authority, and that approval came through Mayor Michelle Wu. So here you have someone we got a new mayor, and the same thing is happening. No matter which mayor you get, they are letting these real estate developers just come in and they take public housing and they privatize it. And then the people who are there are pushed out. So that event was an opportunity for us to go and put pressure on Michelle Wu. And that's not even my neighborhood. But I still went there to support the people who do live there and put pressure on her and say, what are you going to do about the affordable housing? You got to go and ask these tough questions. So I think that Chris did do the right thing when it comes down to it. But I know some people are still going to disagree on that. But it is what it is at this point, I think.
Thank you, Sabby. Keep up the good work, RBN, and everybody in your crew. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Eric, for calling in. Guys, I can take one more and then I gotta scoot. So Guy Nunn, you are now on the mic.
Hey, Sabby.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Getting worked up here because I wanted to bring up, so Frank, who mentioned modern monetary theory, kind of anticipated what I was going to bring up, so I won't go into that. But one of the things that really bugs me is that the Pentagon can't account for $21 trillion of its budget. And I mean, I can't even wrap my head around how much money that is. And so whether we're printing that money, whether we're borrowing that money, that amount of money is going somewhere and they can't account for it. And we have people who are homeless, people who need health care, reparations would be nice, all these things that we spend on that just cause chaos and destruction in the world. We could be helping people to live up to their potentials. And another thing that I like to bring up is that Israel, who I don't know if you saw the news, they shot a Palestinian journalist in the face while she was wearing a press vest and a helmet. So that means a sniper with a precision shot shot her deliberately. And like there was some coverage of that, but the New York Times like uses the passive voice in describing that death. Like, Palestinian journalist dies. It wasn't the Israeli military murdered her like they would if it were a white, like, Ukrainian who was being killed. So
Right.
like the aid that we give Israel is illegal, like on two different accounts according to American law. They're a nuclear armed nation, and they have not signed on to the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. And that's illegal for us to give aid to a nation that has nuclear weapons and that has not signed that treaty. Another domain where it's illegal is their human rights abuses. Like, they've been abusing Palestinians, and they are, you know, Gaza is like the worst example. It's basically this laboratory. They're guinea pigs for Israeli arms companies and surveillance technology, and they use that as like a way to say that that's been field tested on in battle or on people, so that they can go make money off of that. It's just disgusting. Like, that this is our ally, and because these people are brown, like, we don't give a fuck about what happens to them. Like, they are expendable, they're lab rats. And also, like, there's stories of queer Palestinians who are like pressured into becoming informants. So they use the surveillance equipment technology to find out who's queer, and they like use that as leverage to get them to inform on Palestinians. And so, like, this is just like there it just goes to show that there's no principle behind this stance about Ukraine. Like, when there's so many nations that we're propping up that are committing human rights abuses and that contravene our own laws, and that money can be going to our people, and it just feels like it's by design to make people like be in a perpetual state of precarity. Because if, you know, we're doing well, like what are we going to do? We can't be made to fear things. We can't be pressured. We can't, like, they can't use that button to make us act and to obey, like, what they want us to do. So, like, I just wish, you know, that was front and center a lot of times in the discussion of money, like the fact that the Pentagon can't account for those $21 trillion. And, like, one example, Israel is just receiving money in violation of our own laws. And it's just, yeah. Anyway, I don't know what you think about that.
No, I agree. Like, well said. And it's been that way for a long time. It's like when it comes down to the military industrial complex, they don't have to explain how their money is allocated. It's just, we need a big military budget so we have a strong defense, but they don't really break it down. I've tried to break it down before and then realized there's money that's just unaccounted for, but yet they can't give money to the American people because they could say, well, that's considered socialism, which that's not socialism. People need to learn the definition of that. But I just think that that's another way for them to have control over the American people. Though. As long as we need something, they'll always be in control. And that's why they never give us enough to get ahead. They give us enough to get by. That's why people in poverty struggle to get out of poverty, because even though they're given, some people, well, some, not all, some are given like food stamps or they're given like Section 8 housing. That's just enough to get by. That's not enough for you to get ahead. They have to keep people at the bottom, because if everybody was able to rise to their level, they wouldn't be able to control us, because we'd all be. That's why you have a lot of people that are so fearful of socialism. And not just because they look at socialism as something that Cuba or Venezuela has, which that's a whole different type, but because they are afraid, especially people who are elites in this country, they don't want everyone to be on the same level financially or economically in this country, because then that means they'll have no control over us.
Yeah, the I don't know, like I'm old enough to see like certain patterns emerge. The way that the term entitlements just popped up all of a sudden, like probably within the last 10 years, where they started referring to social programs like programs that are supposed to meant to help people as entitlements. And that is, I think, very purposeful to get people to react negatively to those things. And I mean, we have a social contract. Like there's a reason why we came together as a society to ensure like safety and health and protection for the common people. And referring to these rights that we've signed on to in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, all these things that we haven't lived up to as entitlements is just really sick. And it's such a manipulative, like propagandistic way to give it an ick factor so that people like say, oh, these people want entitlements. And when really it's a projection, when the entitlement is these people at the top, they feel entitled to not pay taxes. They feel entitled to have all kinds of benefits and people adoring them and people giving them free stuff. That's the real entitlement. Like it's just a projection.
I agree. I agree with you. It's a constant like reminder again, like they want to be in control. And the reason why they're so against a lot of like these social programs is because at the end of the day, like even number one reason is the money, obviously, especially when you talk about like universal health care, free college. Number one reason is the money, but also they don't believe that we should have it. They don't believe that we deserve it. They don't believe that we should have free college in this country. They don't believe that everybody should have healthcare in this country. And now some people will not come out and say those words exactly. They'll just use other words instead. But deep down, you have some people and some politicians in this country that don't feel that everybody should have healthcare.
And in some countries, that's not even up for debate. It is just like, it is something that people almost take for granted. Like they think of it as their right. And like, so is it an indicator of how propagandized Americans are? Like how, like, it's kind of almost like an abusive relationship where somebody's just gaslighting you all the time. And then, or a Stockholm syndrome, where you just kind of fall in love or relate to your kidnapper. It's pretty sick that, this is such a waste of human potential. Like so many people suffering and people like missing out on all kinds of opportunities and synergies that they could come together and come up with unique ideas to solve problems. And yet we're just letting people suffer and letting these billionaires like hoard so much money that they could not spend in 1,000 lifetimes.
Agreed. Thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to wrap it up for tonight.
All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy your birthday party.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the episode on call-in. Sorry if I could not get to all of the callers. I'm supposed to stop at 11:30, but I don't seem to make that happen. But I'm going to go ahead and end the episode on call-in, and then I will get to comments on YouTube. So everyone, please have a great weekend and have a good night. All right, so I think I have some comments here on Rockfin that I do want to go ahead and get to. Thank you for the tip, Michael. Thank you for the tip, Anna. Sabby, you got to get Jesse Jet on to perform hashtag squad goals and militia intent. I will reach out to Jesse. Thank you for this tip as well. Can you bring someone to talk about planting a garden for the first time in the ground? I don't know what I'm doing, and everyone I ask makes it so complicated. It can't be that hard. Just don't want to make some stupid rookie mistake and kill all my seeds. There are 2 videos on my channel that talk about how to grow your own food. Thank you for this tip, Roger. Raskin saying Marjorie talking about inflation as Russian prop just shows he is on code because he got the memo from the party that this is what they will be unison on. Tim Ryan, Dem Senate nominee out of Ohio, attacked JD Vance with a similar attack. This is why political parties need to be abolished once and for all. Candidates are forced to embrace strategies they know are terrible. Let's liberate them. Thank you so much for that, Roger. All right. Gipper, no, this is for a baby, or well, not really a baby, 1-year-old. So it's not that kind of party. Yeah. So Sabby will be on best behavior. All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I did want to let you know, for those of you who are still around. Oh, wait, I already told you guys. We went to go talk to the mayor. Look forward to that video, hopefully Sunday. I should be able to have that up so you guys can see that. I'm going to try to do more things on the ground, like going to events, especially ones when we can actually like talk to like local politicians, and more direct action events as well. So definitely stay tuned for that. I will air that on Sunday. So, all right, guys. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.